We're good.
I call this meeting to order. Confirmation of the agenda. Oh, first I want to start with acknowledgement, land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is a traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Ottawa, and Mississauga peoples. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for December 6, 2021 council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? I have a Councillor Hitterson moving and Councillor McBurney seconding. All in favor? Carries. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Go ahead, Deputy Reeve-Sight.
Thank you, Reeve. I seem to have a lot of these nowadays, but I will be declaring a conflict on item 7.6.1, which is relating to the salary pay bands discussion. Due to my spouse, Tiffany Sight, being an employee of the municipality, I will not be commenting or participating in the vote regarding item 7.6.1.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Not seeing any, we will continue on. Public comments. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to speak on any item of business that's on the agenda. 2 minutes per person. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on anything that's on the agenda? Now would be the time to step up. Not seeing anyone. Consent agenda, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent items 5.1.1, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.5 for information purposes. Would anybody like to pull anything from that to talk to? Deputy Reeve-Sight?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I did have I did want to make note of 5.3.3, and I think this is very concerning as to the understanding from taxpayers about how municipal taxes are developed. One of the concerns on this 5.3.3 is it sounds like the province has decided to postpone province-wide assessments to properties for updated that were in 2022 and 2023. The real concern that I have from this is as taxpayers, your municipal taxes are calculated by a tax rate that is designed by the municipality, but then is multiplied by a municipal assessment that is done by MPAC. And by delaying these assessments, you're ultimately, in the end of the day, delaying a potential increase to taxation that municipalities, in all reality, would love to see. Obviously, because of the cost of living is going up, and obviously the cost of property changes unless you're under a stone, you know what the cost of buying and selling a property here in Ontario is. So the real issue is that when this assessment may get done, when it will get done, we have no understanding others to say they're just wanting to postpone it. What's going to happen is it's going to impact substantially in relating to what the taxes are for a ratepayer in a municipality. And one of the concerns that I have is, as a councillor and the Deputy Reeve, we get commented on multiple occasions about how high our taxes are. And one of the responses I have to say is, I would argue is, if your taxable assessment on your MPAC notice doesn't relate to what you could sell your house for, you're getting a pretty good deal. So the one thing that we have to understand is, by delaying this is potentially going to cause a large adjustment when it actually gets done, which is going to really affect a lot of the taxpayers in the province of Ontario, and exclusively in North Huron. And one of the things that I hear all the time is, we as a municipality get, and most likely is the frontline staff, get complaints or disgruntled ratepayers indicating why their property taxes have gone up so much. But But the residents don't quite understand that we have no bearing on the municipal assessment of their property. That is done by the Ontario province, or the Ontario government through MPAC. So my concern is ultimately that by delaying this, municipalities in small and rural, and actually not even small and rural, every municipality in Ontario is going to be negatively impacted by this, and it's going to cause more significant issues from frontline staff to understand and develop ways to communicate how MPAC is causing these problems. So, from my perspective, Reeve, that's the position that I wanted to let everybody know that where my concerns are. I don't know where everybody else's concerns are, but ultimately I do have a concern that this postponement is only going to inevitably develop the inevitable. And in North Huron, the biggest issue is we have the lowest taxable assessment of all Huron County, and by delaying this is not going to change that. It's only going to make it worse, and therefore we're going to have to find ulterior methods of revenue increasing when you have cost of living adjustments in the neighborhoods of 5 and 6% going forward, and I don't see that changing in 2022, and I don't see that changing in 2023.
Deputy Reeve, would you be in support of sending a letter of support?
Yeah, I definitely am. I'm definitely in support of what their issue or their concerns are. So I would make that motion to make that request to provide support to this municipality as well as show our concerns if the rest of council wishes to support that.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I have Paul seconding. Councillor Heffer seconding. All in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, discussion. Sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I was against MPAC delaying because it is the inevitable, and it will hurt so bad for whether you're a house owner or a farm owner eventually, and it'll hit you really hard fast. If you're going to be paying taxes, it's better to have that gradual increase. So, it really bothered me, was it a couple years ago when they did it?
Mm-hmm.
They thought maybe they were doing a favor for hardship reasons, I suppose, but it's too bad they did.
Thank you very kindly. Go ahead, Deputy Site.
Reeve, the one thing I did want to mention is Councilor Palmer's making a point. Like when they do their assessment, when they do the review, they bring that change in over 4 years, right? So even if they do an assessment change in 2024, municipalities aren't going to see the full impact till like 2028. So I mean, it's a double-edged sword that's going to kill municipalities in the sense that if the province wants to talk about how do municipalities quit asking them for money, that's one of the reasons to stop, to get, the funding of where revenue comes in. Do I agree that municipal or property tax assessment should be the way taxes are levied in the province of Ontario? Well, that is a larger discussion and a larger debate. But the way our assessment is today is, you're absolutely right, Councillor Palmer, it delays it over 4 years, and when they get around to doing this assessment again, it's going to delay it even longer. So they're going to be still 4 years around until we get a full, true picture of where these true assessments are at for the province of Ontario and for the township in North Huron. That's going to be a fact.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Do you want me to read back that motion?
Yes, please.
So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to send a letter of support for the resolution regarding concerns with the continued postponement of property assessments to the town of Plimpton, Wyoming. And so your movers, Deputy Reeve Sipe, and your seconders, Councillor Heffer.
All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Moving on to 6, public
So
meet.
if I can just back you up a bit there, Reeve Bailey, so your other motion.
Oh, yes.
And you would want to amend that motion so that it would be exclusive of 5.3.3. So that motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent item 5.1.1, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.5, exclusive of 5.3.3 for information.
Do I have a mover? I have Councillor Falconer moving. Seconder, please. I have Councillor Hitterman seconding. Seconding. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to public hearings. We're going to have Director Lutenberger come up and introduce the Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, and they're going to give us our final presentation on what they've discovered about the Recreation and Parks Culture Master Plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to provide council with an overview of the planning process before Mr. Brown provides the slide deck highlighting what had taken place during the master plan process, but I just wanted to highlight some of the things that they were asked to do and what it involved in developing that master plan. So, as council may recall, in December of 2020, the township awarded the RFP for the master plan to Monteith Brown Planning Consultants of London. Monteith Brown, sorry, out of breath again, is a well-known firm, not only in Ontario, but across Canada. And in their 40 years of experience, they have completed more than 450 master plan study documents. So we were very fortunate to be able to bring them on board, and due to their close proximity as well as their expertise. In the development of the master plan, there's a number of key tasks that are involved, including but not limited to reviewing existing research and information on trends, documents and studies that have already been developed, such as the official plan, the township strategic plan, municipal service level review, as well as different usage information and historical information related to facilities and programming. They also looked at our policies and our guiding documents that we use in terms of allocation of facilities and things like that as well. They conducted a trends analysis, including issues and best practices regarding parks, open space, facilities, recreation, sport, culture programming. Undertook a social economic impact analysis and examined population growth projections for the township for the next 10 years. They assessed the impacts of existing and future growth patterns and projected the anticipated community needs in all areas of recreation and culture programs, facilities, parks, and open spaces. They further conducted a needs analysis to identify gaps and/or duplications in services, identify priority needs, preferred activities, and age-based activity needs. They were tasked with determining the satisfaction level in our current programs, events, facilities, parks, and services. They also looked at analyzing program participation levels and facility utilization levels to determine facility provision levels. That was basically to determine if the municipality has enough facilities to meet the current programming needs, or if additional facilities are needed, or if there's a surplus of facilities. And they were asked to make recommendations relative to the provision of those facilities and programs for the next 10 years. They were also asked to determine if the municipality should expand or curtail events, programming, services, and areas, but not limited to children, youth, adults, older adults, lower income, community engagement, special needs, and our own direct programming. They have developed a short-term, medium-term, and long-term capital improvement plan for upgrades to existing facilities, and made recommendations on whether or not we need new construction and/or identified surplus facilities. The process also undertook, during the process, they also We're tasked with undertaking a comprehensive community outreach and consultation process, which entails stakeholder interviews, focus group sessions, community surveys, public information centers. They had one group interview with staff and individual interviews with each member of council. Similar to the strategic plan, the Parks, Recreation, Culture Master Plan is a guiding document for council, for this council, as well as for future councils, to use in planning and making strategic decisions relative to the provision of parks, recreation, and cultural services for the next 10 years. So joining us tonight is Todd Brown with Monty Brown Planning Consultants, and he will be showing you a slide presentation that summarizes the final report that you have in your packages tonight. The report, I believe, is just over 200 pages in length, and provides a lot of the detailed information on the analysis that they performed. So without further ado, Todd.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicki. And it's a pleasure to be here today, again with you tonight. Thank you, Reeve, and members of council, staff, and public for having me here to present the full master plan. I hope in presenting it, you will see that we have listened to you from the last meeting, that we also tested the master plan with the community, and we heard a number of different things, and we've tried to embed that into the plan as well. So I'm going to pull up the slide deck, but I don't want to click the wrong thing here.
Yep, so if you just hit the escape button on that.
Just the escape, okay. Oh, okay.
And then it'll be one of the PDFs.
Sure. Thank you. So as a reminder, the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan is a key initiative of Council's strategic plan to establish strategies to meet the needs of residents over the next 10 years. In terms of the status, the key directions for the master plan were presented to Council on November 10th in order to test the preliminary directions or findings and obtain your feedback, and we thank you for that. A virtual public open house was subsequently held, and that was really online, and it provided people with the opportunity to fill out a survey or to submit their own written briefs or letters to the community or to the municipality. In total, we had 50 responses during that process. Additional information and clarifications were requested of municipal staff so that we could better understand some of the issues that were brought up and to delve into those appropriately. Input from council, staff, and the public were considered in this master plan. Just as a reminder, we created vision and mission statements for the master plan. A vision statement essentially describes the compelling conceptual image of a future desired state, and in this case, to become a leader in the provision of activities, facilities, programs, and services that support healthy and active lifestyles in the Township of North Huron through inclusive, accessible, and high-quality parks, recreation, and cultural services. A mission statement was also developed, which really describes how the township will achieve this mission, achieve the vision. The Recreation and Community Services Department works in collaboration with other township departments, community organizations, volunteers, to provide high-quality parks, recreation, and cultural services to respond to the needs of the community. Just as a reminder, in terms of the community engagement process, we had the initial public information center, a community survey, stakeholder focus groups, town staff workshop, council and staff interviews, the council presentation on November 10th, followed by a public information center most recently. Master plan engaged over 484 households as a part of the survey, which represented about 1,100 household members within those 484. 27 community stakeholder groups attended the focus groups, and a broad range of participants in terms of different organizations and different groups. Did want to just highlight one finding from the community survey, just in terms of the top 10 priorities for additional spending from the public's point of view. Top was nature trails, followed by farmers markets, arenas, playgrounds, multi-use trails, splash pads, acquisition of parkland and open space, fitness studio, equipment-based fitness, and community gardens. You'll see in the master plan itself, in the executive summary, that we've highlighted or addressed each of these top 10 things, just so you could see what you're currently doing in terms of meeting the needs of the community and what the master plan recommends, if anything, in terms of changes or additions to better meet the needs of the community in addressing these top 10 priorities. So in terms of the feedback that we heard as a result of the information that was presented to council back in November 10th, a total of 50 submissions or survey responses were received from individuals and organizations as part of this testing phase, in addition to what we heard from council. The community generally supported expanding trails, promoting unstructured activities, continuing to engage and provide opportunities for youth, undertaking park improvements, improving existing assets, undertaking accessibility improvements, and more. There was a desire to continue to maintain the Blythe campground, as it was felt that it plays a key role in local economic development and tourism and supports outdoor recreation opportunities. A greater emphasis should be placed on the G2G trail and a desire to keep libraries at their current location. There was both support and opposition received in terms of the Blythe area specifically, including potential daycare, repurposing surplus ball diamond, new skateboard park, and new playground, and potentially working with the Lions Club to replace the wading pool with a splash pad. Marketing and promotion of parks, recreation, and cultural opportunities should be improved, such as online and hard copy recreation guide. Volunteer groups are identified as highly valued in North Huron and should continue to be supported. There were suggestions made in terms of continuing to maintain the concession areas of the arenas. And there was also a comment about the house and dam, and that it should be improved or a different decision being made. We recognize the council's already made a decision with respect to the house and dam. So at a high level, without going into all of the details of the master plan, I did want to highlight a few areas. We're recommending that you prepare a redevelopment plan for the Blythe and District Community Center, particularly the park area, which would include a repurposing of one surplus ball diamond to include a skateboard park, tennis and pickleball courts, and multi-use pad for basketball and ball hockey. Improvements to the remaining diamond should be undertaken, including replacement of lighting to meet the needs of users. However, should council decide that the surplus diamond should continue to be maintained, alternative locations would need to be sought for those other uses if both ball diamonds are to be maintained. Extending the pilot project for the 25 enhanced campground sites for a second year to better understand the demand, costs, and benefits prior to making a final decision on the Blythe campground. These enhanced campground sites should be consolidated into one location within the campground area in order to improve maintenance and operations, and that you continue to work with other organizations in promoting the camping opportunities within the municipality, including working with the Blythe BIA, Blythe Festival, Blythe Lions Club, and others. Repurposing unutilized concession space in the North Huron West Cass Community Complex and the Blythe and District Community Center to alternative uses such as programming and office space, gathering areas, and other uses that are in high demand. When major repairs are required to the Wingham Library branch or the lease space of the branch, Blythe Library branch is no longer available, work with Huron County to evaluate the feasibility of relocating the library services to the West Cass Complex and/or the Blythe and District Community Center to repurpose unutilized space and to strengthen these locations as community hubs. Engage the Blythe Lions Club to investigate the potential opportunities to convert the existing outdoor wading pool to a splash pad and seek joint funding through the Ontario Trillium Foundation or other grant program opportunities. We do recognize that the Lions Club did provide a letter with regard to the draft plan. We did put that in the back of the document. What they did indicate, in our reading anyways, is that they had already gone out to the community, asked them if they wanted the wading pool to be converted to a splash pad, and people generally said no. As you can see from the survey response, that was one of the top things that people identified as something they would like to see. So we recognize that they've gone through the process 4 or 5 years ago, but in the current setting, the public is looking for that type of opportunity. And that does present a good collaborative partnership. Ensuring that playgrounds are located within 800 meters of residential areas, unobstructed by physical barriers, such as roadways, major roadways, and addressing gaps, particularly in the Hutton Heights and the east side of Blythe. Playgrounds should be renewed at the end of their life expectancy, generally around 15 to 20 years, to ensure that they are safe for users. As well, new and redeveloped playgrounds should incorporate barrier-free components with consideration for natural and adventure play components, really making sure they're inclusive for all children of all abilities. Continuing to assist community organizations with planning, developing, and delivering special events such as festivals and farmers markets through the Township Special Events Guide, supporting infrastructure, promoting and creating awareness, coordinating with volunteers and other needs as necessary. We also suggest that you continue to monitor levels of participation and understand the economic impact of special events should on an ongoing basis to determine the success of those special events and the level of support you give them. Expanding the Recreation Guide to include information about community facilities, programs, and services available across the township. Pursuing opportunities to address parkland gaps, particularly in Hutton Heights and North and East Blythe. In consultation with the public, the G2G Trail Advisory Committee, Wingham Trail Committee, and the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority prepare a Trails Master Plan to promote trails use and strengthen connections within North Huron. We've identified a number of potential areas that should be key initiatives as part of that exercise. And when you receive requests for new recreation and cultural facilities, they should really be examined on a case-by-case basis to consider things such as trends, examples in other municipalities, local demand, the feasibility of utilizing existing public spaces, so really not having to go out and acquire additional land, the need for additional staff resources, the willingness of the organization to partner in providing the facility or services, and any other factors that you think are appropriate at the time. Lastly, in terms of implementation, as Vicki has indicated, township staff will rarely bring recommendations forward through annual work programs to be considered by council and integrated into the capital and operating budgets to provide additional information where necessary to council to make informed decisions. We recommend that you, as a municipality, regularly track your population and population projections, participation, registration, trends, and usage data to ensure that you're well positioned to understand evolving trends and needs, as well as priorities, and augmenting your township funding practices with external resources as available, such as working with community organizations, partnerships, and seeking grant opportunities. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have, and thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an overview.
Thank you very much for that, sir. I'm going to open it up to council now. Would anybody have any questions or concerns or comments? Go ahead to Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. Mr. Brown, because of our unique geographic layout here in our municipality, it's hard, like for me, for instance, to repurpose one of the ball diamonds in Blythe makes sense, and then to couple it with these additions to recreation. But I don't live there. And so the folks in Blythe, it's really a decision that they need to really let us know what they're thinking. This is just one example of the plan. So they need to let us know, and you read a lot of the comments at the back of your large report. There's a lot of "don't you dare touch it." And for you recommended that it be a thing. So how did you come up with that recommendation, knowing these backgrounds?
Right. Well, we don't always make recommendations just because they're popular. I think that's an important aspect. I think the residents have already told you that ball is not in demand in Blythe. The utilization data says that one diamond is used a little bit, the other diamond is not really used hardly at all. So that's telling. The other aspect of it is there are a number of recreation facilities that we have identified for Blythe. It would be an excellent fit for that location. So if you're trying to promote camping, and we heard a lot about that last time that we were here, and we heard that a lot through the comments that we received on the draft, that we should keep the camping, at least the, give it an attempt and give it a little bit longer. Things like playground, tennis courts, basketball courts, those are a good draw, not only for your own residents to meet your residents' needs, but also for campers as a place to go. The ball diamonds are not being used. So it really is, and I should also mention that both ball diamonds, if you were to maintain them, need improvements. The lighting at both diamonds is in need of replacement or substantial upgrade, and those come with a tremendous cost. So when you're looking at that cost, and you're looking at components or recreation facilities that are in demand, one sort of looks at it and says, this makes good, solid sense when you have a number of other diamonds in the community that are well used, or reasonably well used, and an opportunity here to better utilize that space. Notwithstanding that, we recognize again that the Lions Club has come forward in their letter and said, we have space, so we could accommodate some or maybe all of the additional recreation facilities. So all we can do is give you our best advice. And at the end of the day, you as council make the final decision. But I can tell you that based on a lot of years of experience, if you build it, they will come is not a reality. Is not. We have taken into account trends, we've taken into account utilization, we've looked province-wide at what is going on in ball. We recognize that it is a sport that is coming back, but it's not coming back to the degree that would support that essentially the fourth diamond, 2 in Wingham and 2 in Blythe, as well as the diamond that is located in Belgrave, yes. Sorry, my throat is dry.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Heffer.
Yes, through you, Reeve. And thank you for your update, Mr. Brown. You said on the redevelopment pad there, and the different things that were showed on there. I think you mentioned about pickleball, but I think on the thing it showed it's about 7%, of wanting a pickleball was 7%. I'm just, where do you draw those numbers? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so so there's a number of different inputs that go into a master plan. So part of it is public consultation, part of it is looking at your demographics and recognizing that at the moment you're an aging population, so you have a number of older adults in the community. And we know that pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports, if not the fastest growing sport in Canada. And so you come to a community like yours and we see that there is a request and demand, and we heard this through stakeholders as well, that relining the tennis courts that you have in Wingham to allow for both pickleball and tennis, and a desire for more court-based opportunities. And so although there is a relatively low percentage identifying it as a priority within the survey, when we look at other factors, we know that it would be in high demand if you were to build a pickleball court, but really to make it as flexible as possible, also having tennis be possible on the same court surface.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Deputy Recite?
Yes, thank you, Reeve. One thing I do want to mention, it kind of resonates to the fact that, as Councillor Palmer was talking about, is listening to the public. One of the things that the concerns are is, from a municipality perspective, no matter whether it's in Blythe, or in East Wallinosh, or in Wingham, whatever we put in there, it's paid by everybody through taxation. So it doesn't, so in order, like as is indicated before, we can't just say just because Blythe wants it or just because Wingham wants it, we leave it there and say, oh, the Wingham ratepayers will pay for that, that's okay. That's not how it works. That's not how our municipal system is set up here in the township of North Huron. The one thing I do want to resonate, though, when I read this plan, and I completely understand, I gotta say, is I read, for the most part, for the majority of the 200 pages, I gotta say it's very well in depth of what data is, where it's coming from, where the information, it's not just taking one set of data and saying, this is the result. The one thing I did resonate to a lot of it was, every time there was a comment of taking something out, something was going back in. Like something significant that was going, it's going to require infrastructure, maintenance, all of that stuff. And really, in reality, and when I look at it, it's really based on the demand, on what is being needed in these communities more frequently than something else. So, I look at it as not always taking something away, but re-looking at what we need as a municipality that is growing. The village of Blythe is growing in population significantly over the past 5 years and will probably continue. We're looking at significant increase in population, or I would say moderate increase in population in East Wallinosh from a Huron Heights perspective. The town of Wingham is going to increase with inflow and those types of things. But the demographic relates to where we get some of this information from, and I look at it as point blank, is some of the comments, as the planner has indicated, is not necessarily where we are today, but what is the need in 10 years? Our population is going to be significantly different from an age perspective and a demographic in 10 years from now. And ultimately, from my perspective, what we're looking at here is, yes, we're taking stuff out, potentially. I mean, there's nothing written in stone here, let's be clear. This is the plan. All of these recommendations have to come back to council on an individual basis. My suggestion would be, into the discussions with budget and all the other talks about what we have. But these are the conversations that need to be looked at. And I mean, when we look at this data, we're looking at data from 2019, right? We don't have data from 2020 or 2021. Yes, COVID-19 is going to impact a lot of that data. But hopefully with the re-establishment of opening up Ontario again, and people resonating to the fact that, yeah, maybe being in your house wasn't such a great idea over the last 2.5 years, and maybe want to get recreation into their lifestyle. These are things that we're going to have to look at substantially to ensure that we continue keep the residents that we have, but also promote growth and inside what we're going to have in the future. So I look at it as an investment in our future that we got to talk about significantly. As I mentioned in the preliminary discussion, ratepayers need to understand there is a cost to this infrastructure. So, excuse me, and that is where development charges are going to help, because the ratepayers of today are not going to pay for expansion because of these things that are needed for the future. That's not the way it works in development charges. So I think ultimately, we as council have put those in place to support that movement in the future. So I look at it as not only a good roadmap, but at least it gives council and staff an opportunity to talk about things individually and not necessarily, oh, it's doom and gloom, because I will tell you, one change here is going to impact another change, and then there's going to impact another change. So yes, we could probably take everything as a one-step thing, but I have to agree with, whenever we are going to talk about these, utilizations are going to have to be looked at again, because obviously right now we're looking at utilization from 2019. That's really what we're looking at, a lot of these recommendations on utilization and those types of things. So those are my comments, but I really truly appreciate, the consultant providing us with this report. This is a report we asked for. This is a report we documented that we thought was important to the future goals of the municipality. It's in our strategic plan. We need to now take this plan, whatever council sees fit, and try to make sure that in every discussion that we have when it comes to budget and that this is front and center with the service plan delivery review that we also got in this past 4 years. Thank you, Reeve.
Thank you very much, Deputy Reeve. Anyone, go ahead, Councilor Faulkner.
Thank you, through you, Reeve. Thank you for the report. It was a lot of great information. The only curiosity I had on the report that concerns me is when you provided us a breakdown of the respondents to the questionnaires and to the information for this report. Blythe and East Walnash and Belgrave respondents made up 22% of the respondents, and 18% were not of this municipality as a percentage. So the respondents are almost equal to 2/3 of the municipality from outside of our municipality. And if their input is being used to make decisions in this municipality, where they don't have to pay for it, any of the services, I worry that carries equally or more, a disproportionate amount of input into a report that doesn't pertain to them and could make, the 18% of them could request balloon rides. It would make it, something that's totally obscure. So I just worry about that being in this report. And you got 55% of Wingham, and it went 12 and 10% for between Blythe and East Walnash. So could you maybe just allude on to me of how much weight, or does that get segregated, or is it just all mixed in together as one response to a question?
Right. Well, hopefully I can alleviate any concern in that regard. So, first of all, stepping back from the survey, we look at a number of different consultation inputs. So the survey does not drive the master plan itself. There's other consultations that inform that, as well as what I mentioned in terms of demographics and trends and so forth. But looking specifically at the survey, we wanted to understand where people were from, so that we could see if there was a distinction between what they're prioritizing, what they say they need, and so forth, and see if there's outliers. And so when we look at respondents who were living outside of the community, outside of your municipality, and the responses of residents within your municipality, the numbers were very close. So there wasn't anything that sort of stood out as non-residents are looking for something more than local residents, and therefore concerned about whether that's going to affect or drive a tax increase for people from outside of the community. And then we also look at sort of the breakdown between different parts of your community. So rural areas versus urban areas, Blythe versus Wingham, not so much as a versa, but more in terms of, are they comparable? Are they reasonably within the same percentage that we wouldn't sort of say, well, we got something different going on here. So do we have some different perspective in Wingham that we do in Blythe? And we didn't see that particularly. So I think the survey is representative of your community and representative of the needs and priorities that the community has identified through the survey.
Wish you had a question in there that said, would they pay for it?
Well, and I think it's an important point you're making in that regard. So when we look at facilities, part of our job in working for you is to try to find efficiencies. So some of the recommendations and some of the text in here gives strong direction to staff to optimize your existing facilities, to work with community organizations to identify ways to improve utilization, such as improving utilization of your arenas, your pools, your outdoor facilities. We want to, so before suggesting that you have a surplus, we want to see are there opportunities. At the same time, we think that there's tremendous, that this plan is actually very exciting. There's a lot of really good stuff in here, from my perspective anyways, to move you forward over the next 10 years. And I think trying to maintain, for example, a surplus ball diamond when there's capacity at the other ball diamonds creates a tremendous opportunity. If it weren't for the other facilities being identified as needed and as priorities, then maybe you'd keep that ball diamond and just sort of say, well, why remove it when we got no other use for it? But there are other uses that are there, and it can not only meet the needs of your community, but also tie in nicely to your economic development initiatives with camping and other things to get people into your community, and particularly drive new residents to your community that are looking, young kids looking for skateboarding opportunities, looking for basketball opportunities, splash pads for young kids. So it tries to tie into a number of those different initiatives that council's been trying to move towards with your strategic plan, and at the same time demonstrate that there is a rationale for doing so.
Thank you.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Go ahead, Deputy Recite.
It just as a follow-up to what to what Todd had mentioned is, one of the things that I do look at this too is we can look at these recommendations as a starting of a conversation, in the sense of, if we're going to build something, let's just use a skate park as an example, because it's a discussion. Do we need a skate park that satisfies 25 residents, or do we need a skate park that satisfies 250 residents that are going to support the broader community? I mean, that's the conversation where we have to always talk about, I think, in the sense of where we are today, is, are we building something of an infrastructure perspective that's going to meet the needs of our municipality only? Or are we going to build something that's going to support the broader community and our neighbors and our other people within the county? Because if we think there's a need, and here's where I say this, is because there has been lots of discussions from other municipalities as to having collaboration with Huron County on a master plan for the entire county, because it talks about here. So if you're talking about something of that nature, then that starts a conversation of how does everybody get involved to have a discussion about how you can be a partner in these discussions about these infrastructures. And it's not a matter of this fight and discussion about, oh, one municipality gets it, has to pay for it, and has to pay for the maintenance of it, but gets the use by everybody. I mean, that's the conversation, that's the discussion that everybody has a real issue with. And I'm not necessarily against that issue. I mean, I agree. If the Township of North Huron only needs something, an infrastructure that satisfies 100 or 1,000 people, and we build something for 3,000 people, and everybody else is using it but not paying for it, well, yeah, the residents of North Huron are going to be not very happy. Why wouldn't they be? So, I mean, I think this conversation is going to start allowing, when we make these decisions about new infrastructure, what is the size? What's the scope? What's the look at? And that's all gonna take on to utilization and that type of stuff, so that when we have these discussions that we can have with our neighbors and the county as to says, how does this fit in? We'll have the data and have the responsibility that, yeah, we can have a respectful conversation and we can decide what's in the best interest of not only our municipality, but communities around us. Thank you, Reed.
Thank you very much.
If I could just briefly comment on that point, and I agree completely with that comment, and in fact, there is a recommendation in the plan that talks to, looking at partnerships, and partnerships can include municipalities outside of your own. But I did want to just touch on the example that you provided, and I know it was just an example, but with skateboard parks, one of your partners is also kids.
Yep.
And often kids don't have a voice. And so we've recommended a youth council or something of that sort to give youth a voice to in the community. But also, kids need something to do. And often youth are pointed to as, we just see a bunch of youth hanging out. They're just, they're looking for trouble. Not usually the case, not always the case, but skateboarding is one of those things that gives them an outlet, gives them an opportunity to do something. Even if you only have 10 or 20 kids on that at any given time, or even 5 kids, it's giving them something to do that gets them busy, physically fit. I found in my experience and with my own kids going to skate parks that the kids that are going there regularly are great kids. They'll come with all of their tools and equipment, and the young kids that show up, first-time skateboarders, they'll tune up their skateboards. They'll show them some tricks. So it gets people involved, and often people will then start to watch, and it becomes a spectator sport in some respects. So, there's a lot of things to keep in mind. So I know it was one example, but when we're looking at partnerships, we also have to consider the users themselves, and again, youth and children often don't have that voice, and so we have to sort of bring that voice in the master plan for them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else, I'd just like to say, Mr. Brown, we do appreciate this report. Just for council's awareness, council did give direction to staff to feel out, find out, and come up with proper numbers on who uses our facilities, where they're from, and the volumes. You're going to be shocked when you see the numbers. As we sit here, the numbers have gone out to our municipalities around us, starting this conversation that Mr. Sipe is talking about, and Mr. Brown are talking about, of using each other's facilities and how we can help the costing of this and how it all works. So that has started. It was under council direction, and I also want to point out, and I want to thank user groups that reached out to the staff and myself. I've had some great conversations. Some of our councilors have had great conversations with some of the user groups over the last couple of weeks. Very clearly, it is the cost of doing business that is beating us up. And as Deputy Sipe said, we have the lowest taxation, believe it or not, the lowest taxation base in Huron County, which creates a problem for us. So when you start to see the numbers, what we're hoping to do is, we use yours, you use ours, it's fair type thing. And if you don't have something that we have and you have people using it, we have to come to some kind of agreement. And those agreements are made every day of the week. Municipalities work together. Mr. Brown, I want to thank you very kindly for this. It's a very good report this time around. You definitely listened to us. You listened to the user groups. You listened to the people that came after your first time you were here, and you acted and you wrote on it. And we do appreciate it as a council. This is something that we can put as a solid base and move forward with, as you said, over the next 10 years. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Having said that, there is a motion on the floor if somebody would like to, or if they don't want to use this motion, you can create another one, but I'll read the motion. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the final Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan for information purposes. And further, that Council adopts the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan as a guiding document in the creation of a long-term capital plans and annual budgets. And further, that the council directs the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan to be included in the agenda item under the other business section of December 20th, 2021 regular council meeting as an added opportunity for council to provide direction. Do I have a mover? I have Chris Palmer moving. I have Councilor Rick McBurney seconding. Last chance for questions, comments, concerns. Go ahead, Councilor Sipe, and then Councilor Heffer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I just want to ask the question, as it relates, is the further that on the December 20th council meeting, just so that if a councilor or the Reeve or the deputy Reeve have a specific item that they want to tackle in the next, is that what the intent is? Is that kind of what the intent is, or is there, I guess from my perspective as a guiding document, when we talk about, obviously a lot of this stuff can't be utilized in the 2021 budget, or 2022 budget, I per se. But I thinking is more of that. I'm wondering, is that the intent? Is that if somebody on council wishes to, parlay something of significant nature into the 2022 budget, is that what that request is requesting?
So through your worship, to answer Deputy Reeves' type question. So if you recall with the KPMG service delivery review, council had kind of, because the report came on Friday and a lengthy report, council had asked for that added opportunity to have some time to read through the report a little more thoroughly, digest it, and then still have that opportunity to provide any direction to staff. So we wanted to use that same approach again, acknowledging that, again, 200-page report, you get it on Friday. This way it gives you guys a little more time to dissect it, and then anything, again, that you want to provide direction to staff on, as we like this kind of idea. We'd like to see, can we do a little more investigating into this as a starting point? We just wanted to give that added opportunity without it having to come back through a notice of motion or anything in that nature. So again, just an added opportunity for council to provide direction after having the plan for a little longer. But again, completely up to council of whether that needs to be in the motion or not, based on the questions you've asked of the consultant tonight.
Thank you.
Reeve, just as a follow-up, I guess my question is, as we're, approving as this is a guiding document, my suggestion is that based on that, staff are going to under the impression that the recommendations in such plan should be implemented at some point within the next 10 years, is the way I understand it, at least from my perspective. If staff are looking for councilors to specifically indicate what is, short, medium, long, as part of this discussion, I'm wondering if that's a more relevant discussion than a specific item or something. If on December the 20th, we come back with something that indicates where council sees it as a short, medium, or long-term arrangement, I don't know whether that's the conversation. I guess I'm not sure of how, after today and after December the 20th, it's going to come in during budget discussions for the most part. That's kind of the discussion. But ultimately, there's going to be follow-up reports that have to be made to council to indicate whether or strategy meetings before budget time to establish whether that is something on the 2024 budget that we want to talk about. I'm just not as sure what the conversation is from staff to council and how this is going to move forward after today. Is really, I'm kind of losing where we are going to see this after today.
Yep. So through you, Reeve Bailey. So with that piece, we just didn't want to pigeonhole it in any one way or the other. So if that's what council wants, where they want to see, or kind of put some thought to short, medium, long term, again, that's council has the ability to direct staff to do that. It's just we just wanted to provide that additional opportunity for whatever input you would like to provide into that process. Otherwise, just like any other plan we would implement that we've received in the past, we would build that into our work plans, and you would see reports come before council as they arise.
So my understanding of this would be then that what's happening is next week, if you guys got some short-term things you'd like to work on, please bring it forward next week before we vote on this again. Besides that, this should just go into a strategic plan, and the next sitting council in less than 1 year or 1 year will be sitting down and say, these are the guiding things from before us, and then we're going to implement them, because our budget year is here already. Our budget's probably pretty well set for us. We're not going to be throwing another $500,000 project into it at the last minute. So I think Deputy Sipes on to a very good idea. If anybody wants to just think if there's certain things you want to bring up before we have the next vote at the next meeting, I would leave that in there as presented, that motion. Before I go to you, Councillor Palmer, I have Councillor Heffer's hand is up.
Thank you, Reeve. I'd just like to add further that I presented a motion of I'd like to have a staff provide a detailed report on the campsite down in Blythe, because I see it really comes up a lot of times in here.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to have that information as a report. I'm asking that we put that in.
So if I could just address that, Mr. Heffer, and then we have had meetings with the Threshers, and we will be having more meeting with the Threshers. There's, I believe their president sitting right out in the audience. It was a good conversation, and we were going to move forward together as a team. So that will eventually come out as a team. And work together. We're hoping to work together on different items, especially the park was my understanding of the meeting. I'm gonna first.
So if I can, Reed Bailey, so can I just get some clarification from Councillor Palmer or Councillor Heffer, sorry, on what you're looking for, and further that staff be directed to prepare a follow-up report regarding like next steps or options, or what were you looking for?
Just that the costs that have incurred there, I thought we're going to be getting that sometime, and it hasn't come up. So I know it was asked by different people, so or talked about. So I'm just wondering, just give us some clarification on, gives us something to go by. I'm just asking if that could be possible.
So regarding costing for the Blythe campground, is that
What the costs were for having the Blythe campground and whatnot.
Just
The
want-
broken down part of it, because at the start, last meeting, it came up that there's sort of like the two separate parts, and just with the small camping, just have it broke down, that's all. Thank you.
okay? So I've added, and further that staff be directed to prepare a follow-up report regarding costing for the Blythe campground. So that your mover of the motion originally was Councillor Palmer, and your seconder was Councillor McBurney. So they would have to be in favor of those amendments for that to proceed.
Can I comment on it before I tell you my thought?
Yep. And do you want me to read it back first, or
Well,
is there?
just regarding Councillor Heffer's thought, his idea, if it comes back, like it was suggested, perhaps the pilot campground should go another year. Well, that has to come back to us. So would not that information come forward then? Automatically?
Theoretically, it would. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, then. Take mine off then.
Okay. I believe Mr. Palmer was next, and then Councillor Falcon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I sort of made the motion too because I needed to know more, obviously. It's a guiding document, as we all know, so it's something over 10 years. It won't be us doing it all. It won't be the next council doing it all either. So staff will bring forward ideas. All there is ideas, good ideas to help. And of course, not all of them are going to come to fruition. There's huge cost bearing on a lot of them, but that's what's great about this document, because it gives us an idea of things we can do, things that the residents find important. Like, I had no idea that running trails were so high on the agenda, and that doesn't sound like a huge expensive ticket item, but anyway, so that's probably something that will come forward fairly quick, for the next year. So that's how I see it. Am I I'm hoping that I see it's similar to Trevor's idea, but is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when if we pass this, it's just, and it goes on to, maybe more ideas will come up on the 20th, more concerns, and then that gets boned right, finalized at that point.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you, Reeve. And through you, Reeve. My initial hand raising was on the comments by Wingham Councillor there about pulling out the costing for the Blythe campground. And if we were going to be doing that at this meeting, I would also request that we pull out the number value of the pool and separately the weight room and pickleball, every other asset. If that's what we were intending to do with this motion, was to pull out specific things out of the agreement or out of this report, that I would endorse that. But he's rescinded his amendment. So.
Thank you very kindly. Okay. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone. I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. We appreciate everything. Okay, reports. 7.1.1. Hannah Hallman's here, and she's going to report on the proposed mutual initiative amendment to zoning bylaw, the cannabis facility setbacks. Yeah.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Carson, is my report just on the computer? Bring it up. I don't need to, but...
Yeah, so because there was no PowerPoint, we don't have it on the computer at all.
Okay, no problem. So just in terms of my first report, this report is recommending that Council provide direction to the planner whether they desire that a housekeeping amendment to the North Huron zoning bylaw is desired, in order to have an amendment to introduce general provisions that speak to setbacks to cannabis production facilities from sensitive uses. So just a bit of background, and again, my report does elaborate. The current North Huron zoning bylaw does permit the use of cannabis production facilities in specific industrial and agricultural zones. These were introduced in a 2015 update of the zoning bylaw. And in 2019, there was a municipally initiated housekeeping that updated the language of these facilities to cannabis production facilities to be consistent with the language used by Health Canada. Currently, right now, there is a lack of guidelines or requirements from upper levels of government, particularly the province, regarding setbacks to sensitive uses for locating cannabis production facilities. As well, right now, there are no existing provisions in the zoning bylaw that speak to required setbacks for these facilities for sensitive uses such as residential zones, schools, and community centers. And generally, municipalities in Ontario are finding, as cannabis production becomes more popular, that there is quite an odor nuisance to these facilities. So in absence of current setbacks, my report is recommending that Council initiate a process to consider adding in setbacks to sensitive uses. Several other municipalities in the county and across the province have adopted similar zoning bylaw provisions that speak to setbacks. If Council wishes to proceed, the next step would be setting up a public meeting date to consider an amendment to the zoning bylaw. A notice would be placed in local newspapers advising of the public meeting. And at the public meeting, that would be when an amendment would be presented to Council with consideration for any staff and public comments received during circulation, as well as at the meeting. It is recommended that if Council desires this, that a public meeting date be set for January 17th, 2022 during the regularly scheduled Council meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions that Council may have.
Just before I throw that over to Council, I'll just give you an update of what we're doing here in town is we have the storefronts we have a holding facility here in the Wingham Ward. It's a holding facility. When you get into the manufacture of cannabis, it is nothing but a headache. It is an unbelievable smell, and it just lingers forever. And I'm not sure if you, Hannah, were any part of the, over at the other side of East Huron, I believe, had a problem in the little village by Clinton. Major problems. So right now, we have to be very careful, because right now we have a holding facility, and literally it backs onto the backyard of folks, don't we know, Paul? So if they were ever to start manufacturing there, oh my goodness, the complaints would come in. So what she's talking about is we need to have about a 40-mile buffer around any population. All jokes aside, I'm gonna open it up to council, but be aware this is becoming a very big problem, my understanding from what I'm hearing, the smell from cannabis. Okay, so I'm gonna open it up. Go ahead, Deputy Site.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I guess my question is that these setbacks are they only going to be discussed as it relates to the manufacturing of cannabis? So my concern is, as Reeve has indicated, that we potentially have a holding site here in our industrial park in the town of Wingham. That, you know, if some setbacks were set or whatever the case may be, obviously we would have to, there potentially would have to be zoning amendments or zoning exemptions allowed to that building. You can't pick up the building and move it after it's already been built. So I'm wondering, is this amendment going to specifically indicate manufacturing as the discussion, or any building that has relating to cannabis in any shape or form?
Yes, so it's primarily targeting what we're calling cannabis production facilities. In the current definition that is provided in the zoning bylaw, that is quite broad of a definition, so it also includes facilities that would just kind of be like processing as well as holding. So it would cover that as well, but that's something when I bring the amendment in January, if that's desired by council, that I can ensure that that kind of has more of a broader definition to capture that as well.
Thank you, Anna.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. We could put the 40-mile limit on something, but what about our neighbors? Like, it'd be nice to know what our neighboring municipalities are doing or thinking about, because we'd hate for, you know, we're taking care of our citizens, and then one gets set on the opposite side of the road, and there's houses. Like, that would not be good. So, is there thought about that?
Yeah, so I'll speak to what the proposed bylaw, again, I have a draft, but again, I would certainly present it to council at the public meeting through consultation with the public. But the intent would be that from the North Huron perspective, it would also have consideration for uses in neighboring municipalities, sensitive uses, so you have that protection there, as well as in terms of other neighboring municipalities. Again, you need some sort of assurance that they've adopted similar policies. I do know, for example, currently in Huron County, Morris Turnberry has adopted setbacks, and I can certainly provide some discussion in my report about what they've also included. But yeah, sometimes if it's in a neighboring municipality, you are really relying on them to be doing the same thing that we're seeking to do here and having these setbacks. Yeah.
Councillor Faulkner?
No, she just answered. I was just going to add well, maybe I will. Through you, thank you for this recommendation here. In talking with the surrounding municipalities, you said that they've already struck infrastructure or bylaws, zoning bylaws. Are they homogeneous with the one that you're proposing to, and would that eventually become a Huron County requirement rather than a municipal requirement?
Right, so I can speak to what has been done so far. So, not all, but some of the municipalities in Huron County, through their local councils, they have decided to adopt setbacks in their zoning bylaws, and it is foreseen that what I proposed to North Huron would be very similar in terms of the setback distance. Again, speaking to specific local circumstances and input from local staff, it might differ slightly. In terms of the setbacks that were adopted, the Huron County Planning Department did collaborate broadly amongst the planners to develop this, and a lot of the language that we're using in terms of the setbacks is adopted from a lot of other municipalities in Huron County. So Norfolk County actually underwent a technical study, I believe, in either 2018 or 2019, just to get some perspective on what's an appropriate setback. So we are following their model closely, again, just because of absence of direction from the province at this time. So that's probably the direction that we would go. In terms of implementation of zoning bylaws, it is done at the local level, so that's why we've approached each of the individual councils. So unfortunately not able to regulate them to the best of our ability through one Huron County way, so just going to individual municipalities is the way we've approached it.
Thank you very kindly. Deputy Site?
Based on the information that I've heard, I will move the recommended motion that's been presented by the planner.
Do I have a seconder? I have Councillor Huffer seconding. Do I have to read that?
Council has it in front of them.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or concerns for tonight? Not seeing any, I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Stick around, Hannah. 7.1.2, a proposed market study terms of reference supported by forthcoming zoning bylaw amendment at 40 Josephine Street. You're up.
Thank you. So again, my report certainly provides some more detail, but I'll just provide a quick overview. So the purpose of this report is seeking council's direction on the proposed terms of reference for a market study in support of a forthcoming rezoning application. The forthcoming zoning bylaw application to permit additional use is for a pharmacy use on the subject property at 40 Josephine Street. Council will note just for reference that this is a portion of the property on the south portion of Wingham in the highway commercial zone that currently has the McDonald's facility. So they're moving forward with phase 2 of their development, and they are seeking that a pharmacy be one of their tenants. The property is within the group commercial area of the highway commercial designation. Currently, as of right now, a pharmacy use is not permitted in the zoning, and they have been directed to request a rezoning in order to permit that. Just in terms of the direction provided by the North Huron official plan, it directs that new uses in the group commercial area may be permitted, subject to a rezoning and a market study that is also completed with that. And specifically, the policy directs that the market study terms of reference shall be established by council. The specific policy is included in my report. The intent of this policy and the requirement for the market study is to support the larger official plan policies that speak to protecting the intended function of the core commercial area by regulating the permitted uses in the group commercial area that complement and not undermine the core commercial area. This includes demonstrating that there is a market need for an additional use. The purpose of the market study would be to demonstrate that the need for the proposed use is justified, and that in this case the location of the highway commercial area is justified. In terms of currently right now the township does not have an existing terms of reference for market studies as established by council, despite the direction provided by this policy. As such, to assist with the preparation of a terms of reference, the township has engaged with a technical peer reviewer with expertise in market studies, Urban Metrics. Their correspondence was attached to my report. They have provided a recommended terms of reference that establish 6 elements to be included in a market study. The proposed terms of reference for the study was provided to the applicant as well as their consultant for their market study. They have reviewed these terms and they are agreeable. As a next step, we are seeking council's direction with respect to these terms of reference. It is recommended that council give direction that the applicant proceed with the market study as per the terms of reference included in this report, as per the recommendation of the township's peer reviewer. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very kindly. Questions? Would Deputy Site?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Just through you, Reeve, just want to question, one question as to relates to, so is this market study for the purposes of us understanding whether a zoning bylaw amendment should be done? It's really, so they're going to use the market study for their purposes, whether they can argue that there another pharmacy is required in the municipality, but this is also where we're going to see the information as it relates to the market study to determine whether an actual zoning amendment to allow a pharmacy use in that area of the municipality to be allowed. Is that the intent of this market study?
Yes, so that's the intent of it. So the market study would be a required supporting material to support the rezoning, and then the intent of having the peer reviewer is that they would provide their independent assessment of the market study, and then that would be something we as staff would, or myself as staff would utilize to provide a recommendation for council.
Yeah, as a follow-up, Reeve, I think, this is one of those things where I think it's very important that a market study or something that we're going to have that use to determine whether we should change the zoning is appropriate. For the most of the time, what happens is the zoning is already there, and somebody says to us, I'll use the example of a gas station, because that has happened more than once in the township in the last 3 years, is do we need 7 gas stations in the town of Wingham? I'm being facetious, but that has been a question that has been asked of myself as a councillor, as a deputy reeve. And I have to say to them, it's not our position as the municipality to argue somebody wanting to put something in that is zoned that area. Arguably, if their market says they can make it work, and as long as they pay their corporate or their municipal taxes, why does the municipality, in relating, why in honesty do they care? They shouldn't. Because ultimately, if it's zoned that way, and they think they can make a run of it in their business model, and they're a good corporate citizen, we're glad to have them. I mean, ultimately, that's from a municipality's perspective. But I mean, when we're talking about here, changing a zoning for the purposes, but understanding that some of the time we don't even have these market studies that are available to us when we're wanting to make this significant change. So I'm thinking this is a great opportunity that when we see this market study, it's going to allow us to understand not only, yes, it's going to be segregated directly to the pharmacy perspective, but ultimately we're going to understand we can use that theory from a market study to understand the possible uses that maybe shouldn't be in there, and to look at the zoning amendment in that area to truly function on how we want it to see for core commercial to become. So I mean, arguably, we don't always get a chance to have these market studies when we're making these decisions. So I take it, I actually like this opportunity that we're gonna, provide a terms of reference to somebody. They're doing the market study, not us, because they have to put in for the zoning amendment anyways. So I think ultimately we're gonna get the best information to make the best decision that's good for the township of North Huron overall.
Thank you very kindly. Do I have any more questions, comments? Do I have a mover for this? I have Councillor Halfer moving. I have Deputy Reeve Sites seconding. Last chance for questions, comments. Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. 7.1.3, this is for Clerk Lamb, and this is the appointment of the Committee of Adjustment for 2022. Carson, it's all yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. So council will be very familiar with this process. In accordance with Section 44 of the Planning Act, members of the Committee of Adjustment who are members of council are required to be appointed annually. So North Huron's terms of reference for the Committee of Adjustment says that all of council will sit as the committee. So knowing this, a reappointment of the council as the Committee of Adjustment needs to occur. The one change that you'll see in the report in comparison to previous years where we went through this process is the end of the term for this appointment will be November 14th, 2022, in order to align with the end of this term of council. So I'm available if there's any further questions.
Questions, comments, concerns? Should not be any, I would think. Do I have a mover? I have Councillor Faulkner moving. I have Councillor Van Hintersum seconding. All in favor? Carries. The next one again is for Clerk Lamb, and this is a review and update of the Township North Huron flag policy. Before I hand it over to you, Carson, I just want to make mention that the flags were lowered at half-mast today. The Blythe flag was not lowered because of a mechanical malfunction, and the staff could not get it to come down. So just so that everybody's aware, it wasn't an oversight. It was just something, and these things happen. I'm going to hand it over to Clerk Lamb now.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as council is aware, a motion was previously adopted to direct staff to prepare a review and update of the Township of North Huron flag policy. This review and update involved an extensive look at comparator data from municipalities in Huron County and also throughout Ontario. And the draft policy we've brought forward to council takes in the consideration of best practices as well as local circumstances. So there's just 2 points I want to touch on of that policy. The first being the flag raising of alternate flags. As council is aware, currently the flag policy says no flags or banners other than the federal, provincial, or municipal flags will be flown on township property. But we looked at a lot of other policies and they all have some sort of process for the flying of alternative flags. So section 3.2 of the draft policy does include a structured approach of what that would look like, and it outlines when council will consider alternative flags, how they'll be flown, the preferred location, and the requirements that must be met in regards to timelines for the submission of the request, etc., for someone wanting to fly an alternative flag. And I guess the one thing that's important to note with that one is there is a strongly worded statement in there that says that the township will not fly alternate flags of groups or organizations whose undertakings or philosophy are contrary to the township's policies or bylaws, espouse hatred, violence, or racism, or are politically or religiously motivated, or represent other individual conviction. The other major change to the policy is under the half-masting of flags section. Basically anything that was permitted for the half-masting of flags in the current policy was also transferred to the new policy. However, based on comparator municipalities, we did flush that out a little more to add some other circumstances of when the flags might be lowered out of respect for a loss of life. So those are noted in the staff report, as well as for half-masting days such as today, for the National Day of Remembrance and Action for Violence Against Women. We've embedded those directly in the policy so that those annual requests we get every year are not required to come forward every year, and Public Works staff would just build that into their works plans so that the flags get lowered to half-mast. So for example, Remembrance Day was in the existing policy, but we've added the National Day of Mourning for Persons Killed or Injured in the Workplace, the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. As these requests tend to come forward annually, I also just want to note that the provision that was already in our current policy regarding that the flags may be lowered for extraordinary circumstances at the discretion of council, so that remains. So should there be an extraordinary circumstance or something not covered in the policy, council has that discretion still to determine whether the flag should be lowered. So available for any questions as it relates to that draft policy.
Thank you very kindly. Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. When somebody or a group comes to us and suggests their flag to be flown, is it just for that 1 year, or like do they have to do it every year?
The request needs to be submitted annually,
Okay.
and there are time frames associated with that. So, for example, I believe it's section 3.2E of the policy specifies the timelines is required. So letters have to be submitted to the clerk's department at least 3 weeks in advance, but not earlier than 1 year in advance. But they need to provide us the flag also. So to use the pride flag example, the group requesting that needs to provide us with the flag, as the township will not go out and purchase the required flags, right? And so they can use that same flag every year. It's just the request has to come in every year for those not specifically embedded in the policy. And the intention is that basically where there is basically 4 flag poles, you would have that flagpole designated as almost your community flagpole. But in circumstances where there isn't a flagpole, basically it would replace the Township of North Huron flag for the requested timeline, but we have noted in the policy that the requested timeline maxes out at a month.
Can I follow up?
Follow up, Councillor Palmer?
Okay, I won't use any examples, but, so when a group comes to us, for me, okay, there's some additions, and I like how it's reading now. But that 3.2b is the main, that's the guts right there. You know, does the flag cause hatred? Does it cause racism? Does it cause, is it a political thing or religious? To me, that's the main one that we would sort of hash out as to those are prerequisites as far as I'm concerned. So for that reason, I really like this now. It's got meat on it.
Thank you very kindly. Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. In the flag policy, as I'm skimming over the portion I'm about to comment on, the province has in their policy the proper way of flying a flag, and it goes province wide. I'm just wondering if, because we're adding in reasons of not flying flags of racism or hate or and that kind of thing, that if we have mentioned in our flag policy a portion that says if you're going to fly flags in the municipality, that they be respectful or flown to provincial or federal requirements. Just going back to having flags, the Canadian flag flown upside down in our town is disrespectful of the province's requirements of proper flag flying. I just don't know if that would be any way of incorporating any such thing into I know it's a freedom of speech thing, but of just adding that they should follow the provincial standards.
Yeah, so I guess two comments to that one, Councillor Faulkner, through your worship. So the scope of this policy is specifically for township facilities and spaces. I off the top of my head, I wouldn't know the legal authority we have over someone else's ability to fly a flag in the way they do on their own private property. But then I guess the other piece to it, under Section 3.1, it does say that flags shall be displayed in accordance with the position of honor etiquette of the National Flag of Canada, so that's those established by the Government of Canada. So any flags flown on township property already are and would continue to be flown based on that position of honor etiquette established by the feds.
Thank you. Deputy Site?
No comment.
Okay. Anyone else? I don't think I have a mover on that one. Do I have someone to move that? I have Anita Van Henderson moving, seconder. Rick McBurney seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much. And now we're down to animal control. 7.1.5, Carson, you can take this one away too.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report before Council introduces a shared service animal control approach. As I've noted in previous activity reports, animal control officers are certainly hard to recruit. There's not people kind of just chomping at the bit to become an animal control officer. So I previously updated Council through a consent agenda report on the expression of interest process that was going to occur for the working group. We did release that EOI with 7 responses. However, none of the responses were to provide the service on a contract for service basis like was originally intended, where a company comes in and they provide the staffing and in that service level. So as a result of this and the lack of uptake in regards to that, the working group met and it was determined that we should be pursuing an alternative approach, that being where one of the 6 municipalities interested in participating brings on the staff member and the costs are shared equally. In the report is the draft description of that position and what that would look like. It was originally proposed as a 1.5 FTE, whether that is a full-timer and two part-time, or and one part-timer, sorry. However, in looking at the preliminary costs, and I just want to reiterate that these are fully preliminary. I wouldn't read in too much to them. They're just to give a range of what the overall approach might be. Members of the working group and myself on behalf of North Huron did raise some concerns with the overall costs of those. So there are numbers pulled together for the 1 FTE. However, that would result in a reduced level of service for coverage on weekends and evenings. But basically, in the report, you'll note the approximate annual cost for the service through the shared services delivery model. And based on North Huron's implementation of the dog counter licensee, we can certainly cover those costs through our increase in dog tag revenues that we now experience. And that's specifically for the 1 FTE. However, if 1.5, looking at our budget so far, we wouldn't be able to do that without a impact on the current costs for dog tags or without impacting taxation. So the recommendation of this report is that North Huron continue to participate in the shared animal control officer service arrangement, as we will likely have to incur those costs on our own. If we don't agree to participate, as well as that North Huron supports the 1 FTE approach, and then that also North Huron indicates to the working group that currently we are not interested in being the host municipality, as through discussions with administrative staff, basically with our current staffing capacity, we don't feel that we could adequately cover to be the host municipality at this time.
Okay, then I'll open this up to council. Go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
Through your, in the animal control, with the costing of it, is there any recuperation from people in violation of the rules that would bring in the animal animal control officer? Is there any recuperation of money that might support?
Through Uri Bailey to answer Councillor Falconer. So generally there in our there's the provincial offenses fines, but also in our fees and charges bylaw there's also an administrative cost for staff time for example dogs running at large, etc.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. Just wondering how busy is said person?
So I couldn't necessarily speak to that because for the last little while our animal control was both Jim Renwick and then also as Kirk could definitely speak to, Kirk did a little bit of it as well. So numbers I don't necessarily have off the top of my head, but busy enough. With this, I guess the one thing I'll note with this approach, North Huron would experience an actual increase in the level of service. Some of the neighboring municipalities in their animal control bylaws have exotic pets that are the animal control officers responsible for. We have never had that. So actually would result in an increased level of service for us, which I think there is benefit of, because as of right now, people tend to call North Huron saying, what would I do about this? And we would say call MNRF or the OPP, and usually the OPP and MRF would say call the local municipality until someone brings in someone to capture the animal. So certainly the increase in level of service, there is benefit to that.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
The one thing I wanted just to clarify, you did indicate, Clerk Lamb, that this is a shared cost equally amongst all the municipalities, correct? So it's not based on utilization, it's based on if they were to hire one individual, one full-time equivalent, you take all the costs associated to that. I understand that these are preliminary, and they would just be ultimately shared amongst the 5 or 6 or whatever municipalities that are running. Is that the intent?
So as of right now, the intent is that the costs are based on percentages, based on the number of households in each municipality. So your larger municipalities, for example, participating such as Huron East, would incur more of the cost than a smaller municipality with less households like us, like North Huron.
Okay, so you're basing it on percentage of households, not just evenly distributing amongst the municipalities. Okay.
That's correct.
That's a clear indication. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Good point, Deputy Site. Any other questions? Do I have somebody to pass this motion? I have Councillor Faulkner passing. Seconder, please. Nita Van Hindersum is seconding. All in favor?
Further discussions?
Oh, we just had one, but go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
but
Chris.
this is the proper time for it.
Yep.
Is the wording strong enough about, like, I was really glad to read that you thought it was not a good idea for North Huron to be part of, have this full-time person. But is it strong enough where it says, North Huron is not interested? Should it say North Huron will not? Is it the way you have it? Is that good enough? Do you feel, or should it be stronger?
As the North Huron staff member on that working group, I would certainly reiterate, if we pass this motion, it would be clear that we are not wanting to be the host.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyone else? Not seeing any, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Fire Department.
Finance.
Finance Department. Darcy Chapman's going to speak to us about insurance renewal for 2022. Oh boy, your first one, and it's insurance.
Yes,
Pick the headache to start with.
thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Yeah, I certainly don't have an exhilarating report like Carson, but we'll start off here with our insurance. So in reality, what we're looking at is about a 10% increase, which generally is pretty much in line with industry standard. Actually, I would say we're more than likely on the low side versus a lot of our comparators. Although it's not in the report, we did reach out to the insurance company as we were going through the review just to see if there was anything we could do to try and kind of mitigate the overall impact. Ultimately, what they're talking about either is reduced coverages or increased increased deductibles. And in either of those cases, it really didn't make sense. The amount of money that we were going to save versus the extra risk that we would take on, it wasn't worth it for us to do it this year.
Thank you very kindly. Questions for Darcy? Go ahead, Deputy Site.
Not really a question, Reeve, just more of a comment that I would, and I'm actually considering adding a part of the recommendation of the motion here. So my comment is that, as the Reeve and the CAO, we did sit in with the Ontario government at the time of AMO. I can honestly tell you, I truly believe the minister at the time heard us, but it was during COVID and everything else is, taking a back seat in the sense that they didn't really have an answer to increase premiums. But I gotta say, the Ontario and federal governments need to do something with relating to insurance premiums in small and rural municipalities. It is unsustainable for small rural municipalities to increasingly see 10 to 15% increases in our insurance coverage over the past 3 years. And when I say this is, what's the purpose of going, and in all reality, there now is no purpose to go into an RFP perspective. There's even less people in the market. So I mean, the conversation is supply and demand, the whole economics of the whole idea supersedes everything else. As the supply dwindles, the price goes up. That's no different than in housing, it's no different than anything else. The Ontario government needs to have a strategy as it relates to insurance for municipalities, and if they don't do something soon, I honestly think there is going to be more risk taken to municipalities. And in this case, as the Director of Finance has indicated, is it the right idea to take on more risk? Well, yeah, until it actually happens, until you actually have that claim, and then you're stuck. So, I mean, my addition to the recommended motion, I'll say it now, and then I'll follow up as if there's more questions, Reeve, is that further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby requests staff to send a letter of concern on behalf of the Township of North Huron relating to concerning costs relating to increased insurance for small and rural municipalities. And I would have that copy to the associated the AMO. I would have it copied to Roma, and I would actually have it copied to, as we've seen today in our council package, many municipalities that send motions to pretty much 400 and something municipalities. I would suggest we send them to those municipalities as well to gather some support to see if we can send a message to the Ontario government that says you need to do something. I don't know what the solution is, but you need to do something because a small municipality of 4,000 people cannot continue to have 10%, 15% rate increases, and it's not because of anything we did. Like, we didn't increase our coverage or our assets didn't go up anything substantial. It is sheer premium driven. So I mean, that is my suggestion to the council, to add on to the recommended motion if so choose. But I will make that motion for discussion purposes, Reeve, just so you can get a seconder if that's the case.
Yeah, thank you. Other councillors? Go ahead, Deputy, Councillor Heffer.
Through you, Reeve, and for Darcy, I was sort of disappointed. I thought with some of the closing downs last year, I thought maybe they might have given a percentage off, sort of like some of the car premiums, but I see they didn't. But just a concern I had with that. Thank you, Reeve.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Through your worship,
Yes.
I actually can make note of that. In reality, our premium did go down on the facility side of things because of some of the assets that we got rid of. I mean, and we will get. The intention is to be getting rid of the airport this year, so that'll help it with next year as well, and that'll help it immediately. As soon as it's actually gone, we'll advise them, and the cost of that will come off the total premium. The reality is, though, is that it's a blanket coverage for all of our facilities, and our facilities typically go up by 3 to 5% a year in total cost because of construction costs. So even though we've lost some, the overall amount that's being covered has gone up, and that's why the premium still increases.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I'll second the change that Deputy Reeve Sipe would like to make to the to your presentation and to the bylaw. So the problem we have, I believe we have 3, maybe 5 companies. My understanding is North America, we're not just even talking Canada, there is nobody that actually wants to insure municipalities anymore. It's too costly. It will get to the point where, because of lawsuits from everybody that slips, that they're going to say, yes, it's that expensive, and we're also not going to cover this and this and this, because we don't have to, because there's only 3 of us. And that's where we're losing all our money, because insurance companies make money just like the rest of us. We go to work to make money, not to lose money. And it is because of so many lawsuits coming down the line. So I will gladly second the change that Trevor wanted to make. If you wanted to read that again, Carson, then.
So I only have half of it as of right now. I can't type that fast, but
That's okay.
as of right now, having further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby requests staff to send a letter of concern regarding increased costs to municipal insurance to AMO, Roma, and all Ontario municipalities. But I do know there was more in there. So.
Oh, that wordsmith clerk was much better than mine, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I'll read back the full motion. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report from the Director of Finance dated December 6, 2021 regarding the insurance renewal for 2022 for information purposes, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron accepts the municipal insurance renewal proposal from AON Reed Stenhouse Inc. for the January 1st, 2022 to January 1st, 2023 term in the amount of $206,137 plus tax, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby requests staff to send a letter of concern regarding increased costs to municipal insurance to AMO, Roma, and all Ontario municipalities.
You have a mover and seconder. Further questions, comments, or concerns? Not seeing any, I call all in favor. Carries. Darcy, 7.2.2, environmentally sensitive procurement. You're up next.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the reality of environmental procurement is it's a really tough thing to nail down. I think there's a lot of information that was provided in the report as to what different organizations, small and large, do. The reality is we're recommending that there be some specific clauses within an updated procurement policy relating to environmental purchasing, and that'll help with tendering and RFPs. But the reality is that it starts before the purchasing process even happens. When we need to take a look at environmental procurement, we need to do the business analysis. And it was the Deputy Reeve that talked about this at the prior meeting when you guys were discussing pickup trucks. The reality is that the analysis needs to happen during budget deliberations, during that budget preparation, where staff are going out and analyzing widget A versus widget B, where one maybe has better environmental track record and one doesn't, and then doing that full life cycle analysis, and based on that, coming up with what the best overall cost is, and that's what's pitched during the budget right then and there. So it's not about going out for a tender or an RFP and saying, you know, we know that we want something that maybe isn't fuel efficient or energy efficient, because that's what we think we have enough money in the budget for, but also give us option B, and then we'll see whether we can fit it into the budget or not. It's really about living by that environmental standard and coming up with the business case during the budget process long before you ever get to the procurement stage. For the public, though, I mean, because a lot of people don't read the report, I think it's really important to highlight. Like, I've been here for all of 3 weeks and tried to put this report together. I was very impressed by what the municipality has already done with regards to environmental purchasing. And it's listed in the report, and I just kind of want to go through some of it just to make sure that everybody's aware that North Huron has developed an energy management plan, and there's a requirement for us to do so based on legislation, and you guys have met that requirement. We do use environmentally friendly cleaning products at facilities. All the street lights in Wingham and Blythe were upgraded to LED. The new fire and public works building in Blythe was constructed using energy efficient lighting, HVAC systems, and low flow fixtures. You guys have implemented energy efficiency measures at the Blythe Memorial Hall based on an LAS energy audit. And you've also done the same thing at the West Complex, again based on an LAS energy audit. You guys have purchased energy efficient office equipment such as monitors and photocopiers, use of variable flow drive pumps at water and sewer pump stations, using recycled asphalt and road reconstructions. You guys operate an electronic waste recycling depot, and of course then you recycle all cell phones, tablets, and your own e-waste. And then, of course, the last one that just happened at the last meeting is you guys are evaluating fleet for environmental procurement as well, to try and use something that's a little less harsh on fuel. So you guys have done a lot of things already when it comes to checking off boxes on making sure that you're doing a good job on procuring things in an environmentally respectful manner.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chapman. Question or comments for Darcy? Not seeing any. I have one. If we were to pass this tonight, our budget is pretty well, or should be pretty well on its way for this year. Would you expect this to be implemented into this year's budget, or just it's here and we'll work on it this coming year?
I think there's two parts to it, Your Worship. First, I mean, ultimately, that procurement part where we actually put some meat into our tenders and RFPs about getting the third parties to make sure that they're doing things environmentally friendly as possible. That will include in the updated procurement policy, which hopefully comes to council in January. So that would be something that we'll be able to implement for all of our larger purchases this year. As far as doing some of that analysis, I think that we can do it where we can throughout the year, and if it can be fit into the 2022 budget, then we will. But certainly it'll be something that we try and bake into our processes starting in 2023.
One more question from the Reeve, only because I'm stingy. So my concern would be if we were to do something like, we were gonna put a new, say, snowplow on, are we committing ourselves to adding, because we don't know the price of environmentally friendly, we could be adding 40% to that truck because we have committed by a bylaw to do that?
No, Your Worship, there's no commitment to have to do environmental procurement. This is simply, like I said, I think we will ensure that we ask our contractors to reduce waste and reduce use where they can. It's kind of that more that 30,000 foot kind of statement when it comes to outside contractors. When it comes to us actually procuring internally, that'll have to, we'll try our best this year, but it'll really start with the 2023 budget process. And council will see that, as part of the budget deliberations, and then determine whether you want to go with an environmentally, more environmentally sensitive purchase because of the analysis that will come with it.
Thank you very kindly. Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, you touched on something, Reeve. I am, there's a lot of these small things that we've been doing, like you said. But I guess I worry about for the big items, the big tickets. And I don't want to strangle bidders. You've got to be, and I know you were just talking about that, because in your report you did mention that you need to be fiscally responsible. So if something costs, if a truck costs, like, okay, what we did last meeting, that one truck was a little bit more, and it was acceptable. It was a 5,000 more or something like that. And I think that was a good test. So something like that I think we can all swallow, but you get into the larger items, we have to be very, very careful, okay?
Through the chair, I would completely agree. The larger items are vitally important, but I think we need to do that on all of the purchases that we make, especially the larger ones, where we aren't making a decision just based solely on potentially the lowest cost today, or the fact that what we're buying today, it comes attached with a 30%, a 50%, or a 70% grant. What we really need to start looking at is a total life cycle analysis to understand whether the community can really afford, that purchase that we're looking at. Because it's not, especially when it comes to infrastructure, which is typically the large stuff that we're buying, whether it's fleet or, a road or especially a facility, it's been proven that the cost of that, of putting up a new facility is less than half of the operating cost long term of the facility. So we might get a grant or we might get some kind of flexibility at the onset of the purchase, but then not be able to really afford it long term. And I think that that's where we have to really strengthen our analysis. And I think the asset management plan that you guys are going through and the asset management plan that has to be adopted next year is really going to provide that roadmap moving forward for that analysis.
Okay.
Thank you. Deputy Reeve Sight.
Yeah, and just to follow up, as the Director of Finance has indicated, I look at this as one piece of the analysis that talks about whether this is affordable or not affordable as it relates to an entire, no municipality in my mind is going to take environmentally as if that is the case, 95% of my decision is whether it's environmentally friendly or not. That's not going to be the suggested price, because as the way we are in today's market, with the way it came in about when the Liberals put in the green plan, and everything in the green market costs more overall from a costing perspective, from infrastructure perspective. But operating, it could be a whole lot different model. So, as the Director of Finance is talking about, it's the whole life cycle knowledge of this discussion, and that's going to help us determine, one part of the overall perspective of whether that's a good thing to buy or a not good thing to buy, and not just, taking a perception and say, the municipality has to do this because we have a due to do that. That's not necessarily the case, because I will tell you right now, as it's been talked about in the province and in the federals, Canada makes up 1.7% of the overall greenhouse gases in the world. China's 27%. I mean, we're trying to solve a problem that isn't really our problem. And we are being punished for that particular case. We have to, the world has to hold these other provinces more accountable to doing the things that North Huron and the rest of Ontario are doing in order to make us this world a better place. I mean, and I think the conversation, as the Director of Finance has indicated, these life cycle discussions are going to help our decision making easier, not harder. And I think that's the part for me that's going to be very important for councils going forward.
Great idea. Okay, anyone else? Not seeing anyone. Environmentally sensitive procurement. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Seconder. I have Rick McBurney seconding. Last chance for comments. Not seeing any. All in favor? Carries. Investment policy amendments, 7.2.3. Mr. Chap.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last one for me tonight, so we'll make this one a good one. The outgoing Director of Finance did a great job with the policy originally in 2018. In reviewing it, one thing we wanted to do, just to make the clerk happy, is get it put into the nice new format for all of our corporate policies. But more importantly, I have experience with an investment policy that really provided a strong framework around what I could and couldn't invest in as the municipal treasurer with regards to kind of maximum percentage of the overall portfolio. So really what we've changed here is to ensure that there are specific requirements for annual reporting of the investment portfolio so that council and more importantly the community as a whole sees that transparency as to the total amount that's being invested, what it's invested in, what the overall rate of return is. There's also been additional framework put into the meat of it as it relates to securities for subdivisions and development servicing, which I thought was very important because I believe that you guys are on the cusp of some of that development work and having to work with developers, and the existing policy from 2018 didn't have anything in it, so we wanted to make sure that was included. And then of course there's additional detail, as I said, within both Appendix 1 and 2 of the policy, which relates to the type of approved investment issuers that I would have available. And then more importantly, with regards to Appendix 2, it actually breaks that down into the maximum percentages that I'd be able to put the total portfolio into different kind of buckets. And the reality is that it makes sure that a lot of it is in cash and cash equivalents like GICs or just bank accounts, so it's very secure, but it doesn't get a whole lot of investment return. And there are smaller amounts that can go into things that are a little more volatile, let's say, where we actually have the ability to invest in bond markets or equity markets, but at a very much lower overall percentage to make sure that we take that risk and really spread it out over the overall portfolio.
Okay. Do I have a mover for this?
I will move, Reeve.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? We have Anita seconding. Van Hittersum. Questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Reeve. Just curious on your types of investments. You have low, medium, and high returns. What do they amount to?
Through the chair, I mean, it's been quite a bull market this year. So in particular, the one fund, which is really the only thing that, as a municipality this size, we have access to even investing in, which is in the equities market. It's running somewhere around a 15% return this year. So that would be on the high end. But there are some, in the medium term, you're looking at some of the corporate bond markets. We might be able to get, it seems ridiculous that this is a kind of a medium rate, but somewhere in the 2 to 3%. The reality is that the rates are are pretty low right now, especially for anybody who's looking at investment income from their retirement portfolios. They're probably all crying right now because like GICs, things that are really solid, in the blue chip financials and that kind of stuff with dividends, everything's paying it really low, a lot of it sub 1%. So I think if we could get an overall, if the market stayed the same right now, using this investment policy, if we could end up somewhere between 1.5% and 2% overall as an investment return, we'd probably be doing about as best we could with the mix that we'd be able to invest in.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Not seeing any. I have a mover and seconder, I believe, so I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Director Chapman. Director White's up next with the Public Works Fire Hall Salt Shed final report.
Yes. Thank you, Reeve Bailey. So the report was in the agenda package. We have been working on this project for quite some time, and council is aware of some of the changes we incurred along the way to finish this project up. So we had potentially, due to some of the changes we had made, purchasing the property, etc., we knew that as we talked about this project along the way that we would end up with an internal balance to borrow, and that balance is $381,824. So the recommendation is to include that over a 10-year term, and in the draft 2022 budget we have included $39,000 as the first repayment. The one beauty of internal borrowing is that if a situation changes, you may have the opportunity to pay this off since you're not locked into a financial institution. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Councillor Heffer.
Yes, through you, Reeve. We've just moved some assets, and this is like building an asset. Do you not think maybe some of the monies that we're getting from the assets we moved should be going off to paying this off? Like, I look at 10 years, that's time for two councils to change through, and I think we're tying them down with this, and I just feel we should be moving. We've moved assets, got monies from that. I think we should be putting a portion of that towards this $381,000. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, if I may. So, thank you, Councillor Heffer. So that again is the beauty of internal borrowing. As monies become available, if council chooses to put proceeds money from some of the sale of your assets, once you get the money in the bank, etc., and you evaluate the best use of those funds, in addition to, as Director Chapman has reported, when you're evaluating whether it's better to invest it externally and reap the rewards of that, as opposed to paying this off when you're not paying yourself interest. So you're losing interest, certainly you're losing interest what you could earn on an external investment, but certainly those things can be considered as you move forward, and you have a couple of other prospects for sales in the future, and if council then chose to use those proceeds to pay this off, you're certainly in a position to do that, because you're not locked in.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead, Deputy Reeve Sight.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would say is that Councillor Heffer's brought a good point in the sense of where we put our money. Ultimately, where do we put our funding when we get... The one thing I will recognize in the fact that Hutton Heights isn't developed yet, and that's a significant cost that's coming, just to get the water from the town of Wayne to Hutton Heights, that is right now unfinanced at this point. So I mean, we have to figure out how that's going to be financed. So yeah, in saying, as Councillor Heffer has mentioned, that we have had some assets that have been put up for potential sale or sold, but we need to understand where our best bang for that recovery is. And I think ultimately what I'm hearing is from the Director of Finance, in both chairs, the outgoing one and the one that's here, is those recommendations will be brought to council to decide where and when it isn't important. But at this point, what their recommendation is that in the 22 budget is, let's start at least discussion about the 39,000, paying it back off, and if we want to change something, further on in 2022, then that's available to us, and council can make that recommendation and change the budget accordingly.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone. I believe I have a mover on this one, do I not?
No, you don't, your worship.
Sorry, do I have a mover, please? I have Councillor Faulkner moving. Do I have a seconder?
I will
have-
second it.
Yeah, I have the Deputy Sipes second. Last chance for comments or concerns. Not hearing any. I call a motion. All in favor. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Okay, Recreation 7.3.1 is a lease agreement with the Turnberry Floodplain Conservation Area, Galbraith Park as we know it, in Morris, Turnberry. Director Lutenberger is going to speak to us.
So council, before you this evening is a report regarding the lease agreement for the Turnberry floodplain, also known as Galbraith Park. Galbraith Park is located in Morris, Turnberry, but it is owned by the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. Currently, we are in an agreement with them for the lease of the property, and the lease agreement is scheduled to expire at the end of this year. Galbraith Park is the main soccer facility for William Minor Soccer. Normally, the term of this agreement is for a 2-year term. Staff have requested a 1-year term to allow council to make time to kind of digest the recommendations in the master plan and to make a decision on how we wish to move forward in the future.
Thank you very kindly. Questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. I think following the discussions that we've had for the last couple of years in trying to facilitate agreements cross-border, I'm not sure whether the Wingham Soccer Association would be better off making a contract directly with our neighboring municipalities, may get a better deal than what we've got now for us doing all the maintenance and doing all the caretaking of that facility outside of our municipality. That being said, I would hope that our staff would look at having facilities of usage within our own municipality. There are some locations that currently have fields available that would possibly get into conversations with them of using their fields within our municipality. But going into another contract year group with Maitland Valley, I think at this point we should consider not continuing that contract just because of the outlying costs and possibly procuring places within our own municipality. Thank you.
Through your worship, the soccer field at Galbraith Park again is the main soccer field for William Minor Soccer. It is not the only location they use. They do use the church's field. The church is located in the Hutton Heights area there. They do use that soccer field as well as the school playing fields as well.
Thank you very kindly. I'll go to Councillor. Maybe just before we go, Chris, can we speak to what we're planning on Hutton Heights, or is that still too far out? And the reasoning behind why we're only doing a 1-year term? I'm going to look to my CEO to see if we should be discussing that in public, or...
Through your worship, I think it's fair to say, Councillor Faulkner, so your concern is noted by staff, and we have been having discussions in terms of what other location options might be within the municipality. It's felt in terms of through the 1-year extension, and as Vicky's indicated, in terms of one, it gives council an opportunity to give further consideration to the Parks, Recreation, Culture Master Plan. But second, it allows additional time for staff to continue our investigative work. So fully expecting that you'll see a report in the near future.
And I did do, just so everybody's aware, I did do a follow-up with staff, and it's costing between $30,000 and $45,000 a year for North Huron to cut that park in Morris Turnberry. Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was that much. That is significant. I guess initially, and I wasn't in favor of 1 year. We have to think of like your report, or Mr. Brown's report. He said that 22% of the respondents said money, affordability was the reason that they don't do certain sports. And we all know soccer is one of the cheapest anyways, group sports there is, or team sports. And if we going in with 1 year things makes me nervous. I like that. I always like the idea of extended leases, agreements. If you know more than I do, like about something that's coming down the pipe, like that would be, it's up to you whether you say it or not, but if that negates what I'm trying to come across here or not, I don't know.
I will answer Councillor Palmer with, yes, there is a reason I want a 1 year contract that could be renewed for 2 years or 3 years, but I would like it for 1 year. And there is reasoning that will eventually come forward. We're not, and to Councillor Faulkner's comment, it is in Morris Turnberry, so $30,000 to $45,000 a gain from North Huron taxpayers are cutting grass in Morris Turnberry. But we got to keep in mind that the children are using it as a soccer field. We got to keep in mind that things are happening in North Huron. So we're not saying no soccer field. And we have looked into, believe it or not, all the soccer fields are being used in the area. Okay, the high school, the school, the staff has done an extremely good job in bringing forward evidence so that we can work with our associated partners.
Can I follow up just
Yes.
quickly? Okay, you said 35,000 or so to cut the grass there. Even if, say, we've miraculously found a spot within our boundary that we could use, well, that's going to cost money to do as well. The individual, the workers, they're not idle. They're working somewhere, doing something. So if they weren't at Galbraith Park, they're somewhere else. So just to remind yourself of that.
I have Deputy Reeve cite first, and then we'll go to Anita.
Yeah, I think we have to recognize that if we don't renew, Maitland Valley has made it very clear that there's no funding at Maitland Valley that's going to cut that grass. They're not going to cut it. So it's going to be eliminated as a soccer grounds in my humble opinion. I can't imagine that they would, out of the graceness of their heart, cut it, because it's not in their budget either. That's the whole reason why they've been suggested for the last number of years that we could utilize it, because regardless of where it is, the Wingham Soccer Association is the main tenant that uses it. Again, not going into the consideration about all the other stuff that we talked about and a number of other things, but ultimately I think what we're hearing is, we have to recognize that we have community groups or organizations within our municipality, not necessarily just in Wingham, but in Blythe and in East Wallanosh, that we could utilize these structures within our boundaries. And I think when we're talking about future development, that's what we're talking about. I think ultimately when you talk about, development of Hutton Heights, I think those are conversations that being talked about with the rec master plan when they talk about, parks and playgrounds and those types of things. When we develop or when we ask for development plans, these are going to be things that we look at we should be asking questions about, are we putting things in that are in our plan to satisfy our organizational groups within our municipality that are satisfying us? Is Councillor Palmer correct in the sense that, yeah, we're paying one for, do we think it's going to be cheaper? No. But at the end of the day, we have direction. We can use that, because again, let's just use the example as, yeah, if we don't have it, then great. But if Maitland Valley comes to us in 2 years and say, we're not renewing that agreement, we have no choice anyways. So I mean, arguably, we have to put things in perspective in the sense that we have control, that we make the decision on whether that is. Right now, we're making a decision to satisfy a problem that we have a community group that needs this facility. And I look at it as a 1 year, to allow staff the time to reevaluate, but also allow the new council to reevaluate where they see their plan. I mean, we lock in, as the Reeve has indicated in the past, this council got locked into a lot of agreements. And is that fair? Well, the municipality has to go on, like business has to go on. But in this particular case, the new coming council might want to have another future understanding about what this looks like. So I think the 1 year gives us some flexibility, but it also allows the organizational groups like Wingham Minor Soccer to not get totally concerned about where they're going to end up in 5 months. Because summer or spring is going to come. It might not look like that tonight, but it will come, and they will need a soccer field. So I think we're going to alleviate a lot of stress and pressure on them if we do this and understand that we've got some perspectives on the way.
Go ahead, Vicki.
So, Your Worship, just adding to what Deputy Recyc has indicated, we wouldn't want to be in that position where we would pull back that service or provide the provision of that service there and put them in a difficult position. What we would want to do is have another location for them if we were going to withdraw anything, so that we can, we would have it in our boundaries and things. And I think that's a better approach to this situation, just to make sure that if we're not going to renew that agreement, then we have somewhere within our boundaries for them to go.
Thank you very kindly. Go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you, through you. I'm trying to find in the document what the cost is. Like we know what the cost is of maintaining it. What's the cost of us renting it for the year
Vicki?
from them?
Through Your Worship, we pay for the taxes for the property, and we maintain the property.
So
Any revenue that is generated from the lease of that property comes to North Huron.
We don't know what it would cost to hire Morris Turnberry to cut the grass, maintain it?
It's their monument to the fallen. That is their cenotaph, so to speak. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to go down that road at all. I just get too upset about it. Anyway, anything else from councillors? Go ahead, Anita. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the cost as well. Like 30 or 35,000 for taxes and maintenance sounds very high to me. And is that the real cost, or is that really high?
Your Worship, I would have to. I know that the taxes we budget $550, but in terms of the grass cutting and maintenance, that's looked after by Public Works. So I would have to defer that to the Director of Public Works if she knew.
Okay.
Look into that.
You'll
look into it.
Thank you very much.
So she couldn't be there that day, so the answer was with Stu Moffat, the answer was between $30,000 and $45,000 based on $150 an hour for equipment, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't mind, if we can have staff look into that, that would be great.
That would.
Okay, but that's where that came from. Go ahead.
Just to follow up through you brought up a good point. When we're maintaining the grounds, are we maintaining the entire grounds or just the soccer field? Like there's an exterior to the racetrack, there's a monument there, like the gates, the front, the roadway. Is it the entire thing or just?
For you, Your Worship, it's It's just the soccer fields.
Go ahead.
And then in terms of, there's some trail, some green areas around, in terms of trail through there. So there's a soccer field, but then there's some green areas outside of this. If you look at the soccer field proper, there's some green areas outside their and that's for trail systems. So we maintain that as well.
Yes, that was my recollection too. Thank you. So, yeah. Okay, so any other questions, comments, or concerns on this? Okay. I'm going to ask for a mover then.
I will move the recommended motion, Reeve.
Thank you. Seconder is Paul Heffer, Councillor Heffer. Last chance for questions, comments, or concerns. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. We're going to go to the Blythe Community Betterment Committee request to hold a Blythe New Year's Eve fireworks display. Mrs. Lutenberg, you're up again.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, again, before you this evening, Council, is a request from the Blythe Community Betterment Committee with respect to holding a fireworks display on New Year's Eve at the Blythe District Community Center and Campground. The event will be held from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. And the staff have been working with the event organizers to ensure that everything is in compliance with COVID-19 requirements as well as municipal bylaws. The request is that the township waive the associated costs, approximately $1,000, excluding taxes for the rental fee and staff resources, which would include equipment and material that's associated with removing the snow to allow for the use of the laneways of the campground. And just, keeping that free and clear of snow for the event. So the staff is a very eager and enthusiastic group of volunteers, and they are just so pleased to be able to move forward with this. And again, they've met all the requirements, so we would certainly recommend that council approve the event.
Thank you very kindly. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick McBurney seconding. Any other questions, comments, or concerns from the council? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much, Vicki. Public Works and Facilities are next. Jamie McCarthy's coming up. We'll start with 7.4.1, the agreement with the OFSC District 9 Snowmobile Club.
Bailey, members of council. So my first report is the agreement with District 9 Snowmobile Club. The township is in a current lease agreement with District 9 for use of the Blythe Greenway Trail for snowmobile use. District 9 operates under the Ontario Federation of Snowmobiles Club, offering groomed trails for snowmobilers to ride on during the winter months. Similar to the Blythe Trail use agreement, the right to use the parkland includes the right and obligation of District 9 to enter, establish, room, maintain, and post all required signage. This agreement will allow use of the said parklands for the exclusive purpose of allowing valid, insured, permitted, and licensed snowmobiles and their riders to engage in snowmobile activities in the trail into Wingham. So while I was reviewing various agreements within the municipality, it came to my attention that we did not have an agreement with the local snowmobile trail club. So this report and this agreement is to rectify that issue.
Okay. Thank you very kindly. Questions, comments, concerns from the council? Not seen. Go ahead, Trevor.
Sorry, Reeve, I just wanted to ask the quick question as it relates to insurance. They are required, with any other agreement, I'm assuming they are required to provide the municipality with proof of insurance, is that correct?
Through Reed Bailey to Deputy Reeve's site, yes, they are required to provide a fairly detailed insurance to the township, and it needs to be provided to us each year. So this agreement, I put a 5-year term, so that if insurance policies change or something occurs, we at least have a trigger to actually look back and see that agreement and make sure that we're still getting everything that's valid. So this will help really reduce the risk of the group being on township property.
Thank you very kindly.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you, through you, Reeve. Has there been any, is there any crossover problems or anything that might be problematic with the Blythe Greenway Trail agreement and it being assumed by the Goderich to Guelph R2R or R2R G to G Trail? Too many letters. Is there any conflict in that?
Through Reeve Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, actually you will be seeing another report from me later on this month in regards to the Blythe agreement with the Snowmobile Club. Just because insurance has changed, and that's why it will be brought to your attentions, as we want to make sure that we have an agreement that's updated. And one of the things that's different both for them and for us is our insurance requirements. Again, it's to reduce risk on the township.
So this one is just to for the Wingham portion of it?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
But it's very similar to the one.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Not seeing any. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Seconder. I have Anita Van Henderson seconding. Last chance for questions, comments, or concerns. Not seeing any. I call the vote. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. And pick these up again. We're going to do the sign agreement with the WVRH Holding Inc. That would be here in Tractor and Blythe. Take it away.
Thank you, Reeve Bailey. So this agreement, again, it's a 5-year agreement that was back in 2016, so it is up for renewal. And it is where the Welcome to the Blythe sign is on the east side of the property at 216 Blythe Road. This lease agreement has been in place since 1989 and is due for renewal. At this time, it is prudent to complete the appropriate paperwork to continue the mutual agreement. So the costs, again, are fairly low to be able to rent that space and that land for the sign. And with the potential of a 4-way stop in Blythe intersection, I'm recommending that we move forward with a 5-year lease agreement again, as with the traffic light, it's not going to impact the location or sightlines where the sign currently exists.
Thank you very kindly. Questions, comments, or concerns? Not seeing any. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second, Reeve.
Deputy Reeve Sites seconding. Last chance for comments, concerns? Not seeing any. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Jamie, you're up for Town Hall accessibility ramp now.
Thank you, Reeve Bailey. So the township staff have been successful in obtaining grant funding opportunities to increase accessibility in the North Huron facilities. Last year, a grant application was approved for $100,000 to allow for the construction of a mobility ramp and 3 sets of accessible doors. I will pull up that. My apologies.
It's all good.
Oh, it's already up, she said. Okay, so these are the concept drawings that were provided by Alan Avis, the architect firm that completed the design, and the tender documents for this ramp. So, as you can see, there would be a ramp down the middle, and then it would branch off to the north and center doorways, where we would get those new doors encompassed in that grant that was submitted. And there's another view of potentially what it will look like. So there's that. So in October, staff issued the tender out to the industry, and a total of 5 companies obtained the document, with only 2 companies submitting a bid. Deere Construction was the low bidder, and staff did review references from different organizations they worked with, as well as another municipality, and the references came back well. The financial impact for this ramp: North Huron Council approved a budget of $180,000 to complete the construction of the accessible ramp for the town hall building. The additional funds needed to cover the full cost can be allocated from existing surplus modernization funds, which will mitigate any impact to taxation as a result of the tender outcomes. So there is a breakdown of where the money would come from in the report under the financial section. And this would get us to being promoting an easier access to the town hall within the community. The ramp would start the sidewalk and part of the middle to provide the correct grade to meet compliance. So this design is what the Huron County Accessible Committee group had also recommended to move forward with. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve, and through you. Yeah, Jamie, I guess it's just a general statement too. Like, I'm terribly surprised to see the price, especially when we were told 180, 190 tops back when. And I'd ask a question to everybody: if you knew it was going to cost $252,000, would you still have gone with it? Especially when option A of that particular report for $100,000 did the job and it was AOTA approved. It looked a little different, but it was still AOTA approved. So, like, for me, I was disappointed, Brief. The modernization funding, $114,000, we could have used that elsewhere. There's money here. It's okay. It's not going to cost the taxpayer any money or much. No, none. Okay, good, but it's drawn monies from different areas that could be used elsewhere for other projects. That's what I'm going to say about it. And I know if you vote it down, then you risk that $100,000 from the province originally. I don't know why. But anyhow, it bothers me. I don't like it.
Thank you very kindly. Go ahead, Councillor Hepper.
Yes, through you, Reeve. Yes, again, I voted against it. Have worked with wheelchair before. I felt that other option was far better, and I believe there is another $8,000 here that has to come out of taxation again. I don't know. I'm just wondering, would it be better? We don't have to have this done to 2025. Do you think that maybe some of this stuff might come lower in price? You know what I mean? Can this be put off for a while? Just a thought.
Go ahead.
Through Bailey to Councillor Hepper. The AODA compliance for municipal public buildings is until 2025. We have to use the money up before then. So the feds provided the grant funding of $100,000. That money isn't provided until 2025. So they're they're two different things. Is it going to come down in price? I think you'll see from what I've seen, everything is costing more, and to say that it might come down before the money is needed to be used, which is 2023, I don't think so. I think there's so much backlog, and the contractors are already hard to get as it is, we probably will not see any financial savings for probably years to come.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Not seeing any. I don't believe I have movers, so can I have a mover for this? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Seconder? Seconder going twice. Trevor Sipes, Deputy Reeve Trevor Sipes seconds. Okay. Other questions, concerns, or comments? Go ahead.
Last question, or the one only question that I have, Reeve, is maybe to the Director of Finance or somebody who can tell me when we move the amount of money from the modernization fund to cover the overage, how much money do we have left in the modernization fund? Can somebody tell me that?
We certainly wouldn't be able to know that off the top of our heads, but all those modernization funds are already earmarked for specific projects.
Right.
So the funds that the director is pulling from are funds that are already designated towards accessibility, towards building maintenance. So I guess, long story short, it doesn't necessarily matter how much is left in those funds, because they're already earmarked for specific projects anyways, and those projects will continue to carry out. So for example, if you remember at the last meeting, when we discussed it, there's, I believe, 15,000 specifically for health and safety policies. So everything in that is earmarked, and I guess if we were to deviate from that, we would have to bring something forward in front of council again anyways.
No, so I guess the question is, though, if it's been earmarked for something, and you're taking that money and moving it to this accessibility ramp, then what I would suggest, or in the future, is you tell us what programs are not going to happen. Because right now what we're hearing is what I think has been at least explained, or at least the communication from Councillor Palmer and especially Councillor Palmer, is we earmarked that money to have certain programs, and now we can't do those programs because we're putting it to this accessibility ramp. My question is that I think ultimately is, for other councillors and even myself, I think this necessarily needs to happen. I do. But what I do think is necessary is that council needs to know is, what are they willing to choose? Are they willing to choose this accessibility ramp, or are they willing not to take it out of the accessibility ramp because these things are more important? Because that's really what we did. We earmarked those things because we thought those things were important as well. But if we all of a sudden take away from them...
Yeah, and so maybe I will elaborate on that. The ones we are pulling from, we earmarked them knowing that we are likely to experience increased costs for this. So for example, I believe one of them was 20,000 towards accessibility, and we didn't necessarily know at the time what that would have looked like, but we knew that we were going to incur costs towards accessibility, towards building maintenance. So we're not really pulling anything away from anything with these sets of funds, because at the time, if you recall, the CAO had brought that report forward because we had to have it all allocated. So basically we knew what our areas would be. That, for example, accessibility projects, we knew we were going to have building maintenance, and all this just fits within the parameters, which is not why you're seeing something from the director to reallocate any of those funds, because it's already allocated for something that fits this need. And I don't know if the director, might have more of a breakdown of those costs, but
through Reeve Bailey to Deputy Reeve Site, the specific allotment or allocations that we took the money from, so the $20,000 from accessibility upgrades, there was no specific project for that. It was just upgrades that we would probably need, so we set that money aside. Also, there was about $54,000 to $55,000 that we grabbed for building upgrades. So whether that was a building for anywhere in the municipality, instead of allocating it to anywhere else, we allocated to the ramp. As well, there was about $16,000 for upgrades to the council chambers or something.
So that one, the 16,000 was from the previous accessibility upgrades to the town hall front counter, and so that was the came in under for that, so we were able to use that 16,000 for the next step of that.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to add, I mean, I truly believe you guys are doing what you believe are the best interest of the municipality. That's not the question here. The question is that when we were asked as council by the CAO to earmark stuff, right? The argument is we're earmarking stuff to spread money around for other projects within the municipality. Now we're not doing that. We're basically putting all of our eggs in one project, which council may think is fine. I mean, but I mean, what ultimately is the problem is council's not really getting a chance to function to understand whether that is the best answer to the question of the modernization fund. I mean, that's ultimately, I think this, from walking the municipality, I do think that's appropriate. I mean, I do, in all hardness. But if this was a different building, maybe the answer is not the same because we earmark things a different way. So what I'm saying is, when in the future, if you're going to pull money from the modernization fund, my suggestion is at least you have council that says, here's the things we're allocating from it, and at least then council can, when they're making a motion, they can at least say, yep, I agree, that is more important than X, Y, and Z. Because right now we don't know that.
So I see Director Chapman stepped up here, so we're going to give him a second. Go ahead.
So if I could take a stab at this to try and really clear things up to make it simple. The modernization funding, first of all, was like $500,000 that you guys got. So it has been spread around to a bunch of different things. And within the application, some of the projects were extremely specific, like records management or the Laserfiche. It's some of the very, defined things within the programs that you guys wanted to accomplish. Some of it was more broader based goals, like accessibility or building upgrades. So there was never anything absolutely earmarked within the grant application or within last year's budget, specifically for the use of that funds. On top of that, some of the projects have been completed or are near completion, and there were surpluses within those projects. So all of that combined meant that we had this $114,000 still left yet to allocate somewhere. This project fits within the scope of the criteria of the grant, so that's why we're suggesting using it. We actually don't have another project that we would use it for at this stage of the game. If we did, it would have been in this report, we would have brought that forward. To your very first question as to how much is left, there is no more money left that we haven't allocated. And the reason for that is we still needed to come up with $8,000, as one of the members of council has already pointed out. So we were still $8,000 short. So this will exhaust the modernization funds. So hopefully that answers all of the parts of the question.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns from council? Not seeing. I believe I have a mover and seconder. So I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much. And I believe that's it for you, Vicky? Jamie, sorry.
You almost did it.
Almost made it through the night. Okay, up next is the CEO report, 7.6.1 in the consolidated 2022 salary grid. And Deputy Reeves Hype has stepped away from the table for conflict of interest. I'll hand it over to you, Dwayne.
Thanks, Your Worship. So it's a best practice, as council is aware, to review and adopt a consolidated version of an employee salary grid on a regular basis. And before you tonight is an updated 2022 salary grid. The grid itself incorporates the cost of living adjustment that council has previously approved, And as well, the province announced an increase to the minimum wage effective January 1st of 2022, so we've incorporated that. There's also some job title changes that are being proposed, but changing a job title does not change the financial compensation package. It's really more from an organizational perspective. And in terms of, and there's another report in terms of the CBO and bylaw enforcement officer has been incorporated within the 2022 grid as well. Just something for consideration as we move forward. In talking to our pay equity consultant, she has advised that the salary grid that we are currently in terms of moving forward with for 2022 may not be keeping pace with the market. And it's possible that the compensation philosophy in 2017, 2018, we did the previous pay equity exercise. Council indicated that they wanted to be the median of the market. They wanted to be middle of the road, didn't want to be in the high end, and didn't want to be in the low end. We may be falling a little low on that, but not something to be concerned about for 2022 in terms of the salary grid. But in the draft 2022 budget, we do have some money proposed there to undertake a pay equity review exercise. Those do, it's a good practice to do those every 4 to 5 years. We are due for that. So we've included in the draft budget $20,000. And the timeline there would be that we would complete the exercise in 2022, but in terms of if there was any financial impact, you'd be able to consider that financial impact as part of your 2023 budget process.
Thank you very kindly. Questions, concerns, or comments? Not seeing any. Go ahead, Councilor Palmer.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, 20,000 increase. I think every year you go through this process, and it was 118,000 or something last year. Now, like that was pay equity in a way. That was pay equity at its working, right? And it was 140,000 the year before. Am I off base here? Is it something different or what?
He's going to answer you.
Yeah, and maybe just in terms of clarification as far as, so there's the pay grid, and then all staff are on the pay grid. And subject to satisfactory performance reviews, staff are eligible to move on the pay grid. So a staff member maybe at step 2, and they move to step 3, step 4, and what the numbers that you're suggesting or have reference to will be in reference to individuals who are eligible for grid movements, and it'll also incorporate in cost of living adjustment. So those two factors. So the number of 140, let's say that you had mentioned, would be your cost of living and incorporate employees to be eligible for grid movement. Pay equity is a little bit different in terms of pay equity looks at what the duties and responsibilities are for a position, and then in terms of, and it's also and then in terms of it looks at your gender. There's pay equity legislation. We have to make sure we're in compliance with pay equity legislation. So we look at duties and responsibilities of the various positions, and not to get technical, but there's a point scoring system that occurs. And then once you establish your duties and responsibilities and your job descriptions, then you do what we call market review, and you check those against the market. And that's the 50 percentile that has been our compensation philosophy. So in terms of changing duties and responsibilities of a staff member or of a position can move it up or down on the pay grid in terms of the different bands. And in terms of the market review, that's something not within our control. That's really in terms of what employers are having to pay to attract and retain the employees that you have on staff. So there's two aspects to pay equity. And I believe what you're referring to is more what we're doing tonight, which is your cost of living, minimum wage adjustments, and then in terms of the financial impact, we'll be looking at, and we're right now completing our performance review exercises, so you know, in terms of,
See where you move then.
say we're moved, but we already have, we have that number. I don't know off the top of my head. And the reason why I know we have that number is because we've incorporated all of this into the draft 2022 budget that you're going to see on Thursday.
All right.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone. Do I have a mover for this motion? I have Anita Van Henderson moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick McBurn who's seconding. Last call for any comments, concerns, or questions. Not seeing any, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much, Lee. Correspondence, 8.1.
To 7.6.2.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. 7.6.2, the appointment of the chief building official and drainage superintendent. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Thanks, Your Worship. So as Council's aware, the shared building service arrangement with Morris Turnberry expires at the end of the year. And the purpose of this report is in terms of securing chief building official services, building inspector services, and drainage superintendent services for January 1 of 2022. So just in terms of a bit of background, earlier this fall, and as authorized council, the recruitment process for a chief building official and bylaw enforcement officer was undertaken. The process was successful in terms of recruiting of qualified and experienced individual, and terms and conditions of employment were agreed upon. Just immediately or at the time of executing the employment agreement, the individual received some unfortunate news and subsequently is not in a position at this time to sign, but has certainly indicated a willingness and wanting to sign and to assume the position. So on the interim basis, what is being proposed and recommended is RSM Building Consultants, third-party consultant for building and services. Staff have been speaking with them back and forth over the last few weeks, and basically they are in agreement to come on board on a short-term basis until this individual can assume the position. And if it is that the individual is not able to assume the position, then we will repost. With respect to drainage superintendent services, we do have a limited number of drains, so it's not a high activity area. However, we do need to have somebody on board. We have reached out to 2 engineering firms, RJ Burnside and Dietrich Engineering, and it's being recommended that RJ Burnside be appointed as a drainage superintendent. And with respect to bylaw enforcement, our bylaw enforcement officer submitted his resignation effective December 17th. The plan has been, it continues, that the CBO will assume responsibility for bylaw enforcement, and again, the successful candidate fully understood that and is willing to take on those duties and responsibilities, but as indicated, that individual right now at this time is not able to step into the role. So I have been working with other municipalities on securing bylaw enforcement services on that. So you'll see the motion there in terms of, it's a fairly lengthy motion, but in terms of to secure services related to building services.
Okay, so I'm going to open up to the council. Questions, comments, or concerns? Not seeing any, I'm going to call ahead Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Reeve. Yeah, Dwayne, I was just wondering, like you did say on a temporary basis, it's in your discussion, but is it in the motion? I'm not seeing it. Should it be in the motion?
Through your worship,
Yes, sorry.
It's in terms of, it's certainly intended to be on an interim, and actually in terms of RSM, they are a temporary provider. So they're not interested on a long-term basis.
Okay.
They've indicated essentially it's one of 2 things, whether one, the individual can sign the employment contract, or we repost. But certainly it's expected that there'll be an individual stepping into the position in 2022, whether it's this person or someone else.
Yeah. Follow up.
And you stated that it's going to cost maybe more than you expected. Do you have an idea?
No, through your worship. So we provided the building activity for the last 4 or 5 years, and they are going to be getting back to us with a quote in terms of what it may mean in terms of what we can hire a full-time position for versus it may not cost us more, but we may get less service in terms of you can hire an individual on a full-time basis for likely the money that we would be paying RSM to provide the service. So it's possible. So when I say higher costs, it's you might get less service for the same money, but you'll get the service.
All right. The needed service.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Heffer.
Yes, through you, Reeve. I'm just curious, I see R.J. Burnside have it, and no problem, I'm not knocking them by any means. Mr. Diedrich, they said they're just too busy or something, I think I read in before.
Yep.
I'm just curious why maybe Blueprint at Exeter wasn't, or are they not doing enough municipality work? Like, just number-wise. I'm just curious on that. I just see.
I'll have to hand it over to you. I've never
Yeah,
heard of them.
through your worship, Councillor Heffer. The only two I'm familiar with is R.J. Burnside and Dietrich Engineering.
So the firm you're talking about is GM Blue Plan, and to my knowledge, while they have engineers that do drainage, I do not believe they specialize in drainage like your Dietrichs and your Burnsides.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to call the motion then.
Need a mover and seconder.
Yeah, would I have a mover for, yeah, sorry. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Seconder, please.
I will second it.
Deputy Reeve Sykes seconds. Last chance for conversation, communication, questions. It's very difficult to find one of these guys, by the way. Very difficult. Okay, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you.
Reeve?
Yes.
It'd be nice if we can thank Kirk for his years of service. He's done a good job, and we do that for other people. It's like he's retiring in a
Yep.
way. He is retiring from us.
Yep.
I would like that to happen.
I think probably all of council's good with that. Will we need a motion for that, or just?
So
No,
so I guess for council's benefit, so we as staff have already done something, and we can certainly
Do something, Council.
pull a letter on behalf of council together.
Please do.
Yep. So we will certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, correspondence 8.1. The only correspondence for tonight is Judy Salone, president of Huron Pioneer Rush, and they're out in the audience tonight. And they would like that the Council of North Huron hereby receives a correspondence from the Huron Pioneers Thrasher and Hobby Association, authorized staff to include representative of the Thrashers in any discussions regarding the campground. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin Faulkner moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick McBurney seconding. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much for stepping forward. We do appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Council reports, Reeves report, activity report. Well, as I've said all night, I haven't been very busy the last couple of weeks. But I do want to say that, believe it or not, we're going to have another third shot for COVID. I'm not sure how we're going to arrange this one because, as we all know, the arenas are all very busy now. I haven't reached out to Dave Clark yet, but I think on the 15th or the 19th, something like that, of December, the booster shot, as they call it, will be available for everybody that's 50 and above. And of course, I strongly recommend everybody to get their booster shot. It helps us all. I've got a lot on the go, but nothing I want to talk about tonight that I haven't already talked about. Council members' reports, verbal or written updates from members who sit on boards or committees. Not seeing. Go ahead, Paul.
Yes.
Mr. Heffer.
Thank you, Reeve. The Sustainable Huron, they had a meeting. They finally got to meet, and They had 3 farmers on it. They had Martin Vanderloo from Ben Miller. We all know where those silos are there. And he had some interesting outlook. He's been there 35 years. He's got a spot also down in Ingersoll. But the inflation, interest rates, all that type of stuff hits people. The 100 ships out at port at Long Beach, slowing things down, can't get things moving. And you think we have headaches? He has some too. I guess a bit bigger type. These shipment containers that go from, you see them on the boats, that one that went on fire there a while ago or dumped into the ocean. It costs $3,500 to ship one of them. And today the cost is $25,000. And he's got 100 of these things from here to Vancouver. And that was just before the flood there, wondering how they're ever going to get through. And then all the problems in the harbors, people are taking advantage of that, and workers and whatnot. But and it came out there, somebody said, I think his Deputy Sipes said about the carbon tax, we're equivalent for 1.7. And he says, in all fairness, the carbon, the farmers aren't getting the credits for the carbon, carbon credits, like from all their cover crops and woodlots. Just some things feel just aren't fair enough with some of the stuff that's going on. And then another one was Miss Teresa Van Roy. She's down by Dashwood, a big farm, pig, and then they're into garlic and whatnot now, but they're having trouble getting foreign laborers in. And so now they're trying to get better equipment that can do a lot of the stuff that, the hand labor has to do, but just a problem. And then that was the first time I heard of a souche. Their son just moved into a souche. Again, it's a house and a shed. So it's coming on board now, and it really is working out good for them, they said. And then the last farmer was a gentleman down near Varna, and he's just a small farmer, but he puts all his stuff through locally. So it's 3 different types of farming that's going on, and is really interested. And yes, back up to Mrs. Van Roy. 1983, she gave the prices of the farmland down there $1,600 per acre, and now 2021 prices, it's up to $25,000 an acre. I know that's good cash crop land down there, but those were the figures she left with, and she says for younger people to get in, things are pretty difficult. So it's very good. And a lot of thing was, how are they working their land to keep that water from getting in the runways and going out and causing problems in the harbor down at Goderich, let's say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else? Go ahead, Anita.
Yes, the North-Huron Family Health Team is working on their 5-year strategic plan. So we had a consultant with us and did all kinds of exercises, and looking forward to the community improvement plan. What is it called? Well-being and improvement plan, working into that too. So, yep.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. Through your Reeve, and probably to your Reeve, on the Blythe BIA requesting going to virtual meetings. I thought that might have been on this agenda, but is that going to be on a future agenda, or is that just a simple staffing?
Yeah.
change?
I was going to bring it forward on this agenda. Unfortunately, when I had conversations with the head of staff, it is virtually impossible to do what I want to do. What was it called again?
Hybrid?
You were looking for a hybrid model.
Yeah, I'll let Carson speak to it so we have a better understanding. It just, unfortunately.
Well, I guess for where we landed on it, and as you will be aware, Councillor Falconer, is we're looking to schedule a meeting with executive members from the Blythe BIA, and we were hopeful to have that meeting in advance of today's meeting. However, just some of the timings with some of the BIA members, it didn't work out, and we could kind of flush something out a little further before it came forward of what they're looking for and what's feasible from a public notice perspective and all that. So I'm hopeful that all those concerns can get addressed through a BIA executive / staff / council representatives meeting in the near future.
So we are going to have that meeting shortly. Yeah, we're setting it up. And and unfortunately, the hybrid idea just wouldn't work, but it would be so beautiful. I mean, I look at it as if we're kind of still riding the horse and somebody just passed me in a tractor. We should be all, if you have a snowstorm, why would you want to risk your life to come to here to this meeting if you could just pop this thing on knowing the highway's down? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through you. I understand you're talking about the council as a whole public meeting, this meeting being hybrid. Now, what I'm requiring is, or what I'm asking is permission for or what they're asking for is permission for the BIA to hold their meeting virtually, which I don't think would have any impact because their meetings are not held in camera at any time.
So if
we're asking for permission that they be able to hold their meetings virtually.
So to clarify that, so BIA meetings are open to the public as well, right? So there's the same public meeting requirements for any committee of council, including our boards. And so from my professional recommendation as a clerk, from a public meeting and notice perspective, you want to keep a consistent approach to all your meetings. So the conversation I had with Reeve Bailey is, if you want to move to virtual meetings, that's fine. I would recommend all your council and committee meetings move to virtual then. If you want to move to a hybrid meeting, that's fine. But I would recommend that all your meetings move to hybrid, or if you want to be in person, that's fine, but they would all remain in person. Because for a member of the public who's trying to navigate how to participate at any meeting, it's already confusing enough as it is, and then you throw more wrinkles for someone who might attend an ECDEV meeting, and they know the processes, and then those processes completely change. We know people trying to attend meetings to begin with is difficult to navigate, and I just wouldn't want to make that any more of a concern for members of the public, because again, all our committees and boards are all open to the public, and we want to ensure that we remain open and transparent. So I guess if council wants to move to a virtual approach for live BA, for example, I mean, that's fine. And I guess my staff recommendation would be that you provide that option for all your committees and council.
The only restraint that I see that they're having is because they're holding their meetings in a township facility. If they held their meeting in any other board meeting, any other meeting room, they wouldn't have to abide by the requirements that municipality has. Yep. So that isn't out for them, I guess.
And that's not to say that they can't hold their meetings in a different location, provided that notice to the public is provided that this is where the meeting is going to be held.
Because the last one I was over, we held it in the church down by the arena. Like it's 18 months ago since I've actually been to 1 year.
Yeah, under COVID, during the warmer months, even the colder months, they had it outdoors. But yeah.
We will be getting together shortly to get this. I want to get a lot of this straightened out, Kevin. So be assured it's going to get straightened out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone. Comments by members? Was that the one I just did? Or were you there? Go ahead, Trevor Sipes.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I just want to, excuse me. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Wayne Lions Club for the effort that they did in order to put together a lovely Santa Claus parade this past, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, in the town of Wingham. I can tell you, my kids got the thrill of their life. So, I mean, for me, excuse me, For me, I think, ultimately it was a shared exercise. Obviously, the Lions Club put all the effort into organizing. The Wingham BIA helped with their insurance needs. It was a community effort in order to ensure that event went off with, I would suggest, without a real hitch. And I thank the Lions Club as well as the Public Works staff and anybody who had any resulting or any impact to putting on that event, because I think it was well shared and well received by many in the township. The other thing I want to bring attention to is on December the 18th, me and Councillor Heffer, as I have been one of the most frequent members since COVID, as well as before this previous council, is that Marie and Gary Lyle are going to be, along with the Wingham Columbus Center, are going to again be putting on their annual Christmas dinner for the less fortunate. It is again going to be a drive-through event, obviously due to COVID restrictions and the sitting, and for the amount of people that they serve, it just works better in this particular capacity. So I again, as the previous year happened, me and Councillor Heffer obviously provided some, obviously some greeting and some more traffic. I would suggest traffic arrangements other than that, but it's it's a great thing to be able to help Gary, Maureen Lyle, as well as the Columbus Center for that event. So I wanted to make mention of that and to thank them even before the event happens. I know Councillor Palmer, he's an active member in that committee as well. So I just wanted to take this time to commend them for their efforts in the community as well. So thank you very much, Reeve.
Thank you, Deputy Sipe. Anyone else? Not seeing any. We'll move on. Notice of motion, we do not have any. And then we're going to go to bylaws now. Okay. 11.1, bylaw number 94, 2021, appointment of drainage superintendent. Do I have a mover? I have Anita Van Henderson moving. I have Councillor Faulkner seconding. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 95, 2021, appointing the chief building official. Do I have a mover? I have Mr. Faulkner moving. Do I have a seconder? I have Rick McBurney seconding. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 96, 2021, appointment of a building inspector. Sorry, I should have said official on the first one. This is now the inspector. My apologies. Do I have a mover?
I'll remove.
I have Trevor Sipes moving. I have Paul Heffer seconding. All in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 97, 2021, procedure bylaw amendment, update to section 5.2A. 1. Do I have a mover? I have Anita Van Henderson moving, and I have Rick McBurney seconding. All in favor? Carries. Announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, December 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. in the North Huron Town Hall Theater. The budget meeting will be held on Thursday, December 9th, 2021 at 9 a.m. in the North Huron Town Hall Theater. The next North Huron Police Services Board meeting will be held on Tuesday, December 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the North Huron Town Hall Theater. The next Economic Development Recovery Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, December 16th, 2021 at 2 p.m. here at the Town Hall Theater. The next Wingham BI Board meeting will be held on Thursday, December 16th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. at the Hot Stove Lounge in the North Huron West Cask Community Complex. And the next Blythe BIA Board meeting will be held on Thursday, January 27th, 2022. I believe that should be 21, at 8 a.m. at the Blythe District Community Center. Sorry, that is, you got January in there?
But I do believe that the Blythe BIA pushed their one meeting. Councillor Faulkner can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's a meeting December still.
Yes, 23rd, I believe.
Okay.
I thought it was just prior to Christmas.
Yeah, I do know they pushed their one meeting
So there will be another meeting in December before the January one.
Okay, so we're thinking it's the 23rd. It will be posted on our site for clarification, so anybody that wants to attend it can be there. Okay, 13 is other business.
I have a,
Go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
thank you. I think this is an appropriate spot for it. I've had questions, or people contact me from the Blythe BIA and the Blythe Community Betterment. They're the orchestrators of the Santa Claus Parade, and the BIA was working on the initiative of the campground and the Rudbeckia Festival and such. And a current condition is come up with all of them, and I wonder if I just get some clarification on it. The starting with the betterment, one was they apologized for putting up the announcement before council had a turn that was in the paper for the advertising the fireworks at New Year's prior to this. So they were at bended knee asking for forgiveness of that. But that brought to light that the BIA had promotional advertising for the campground made up by their members, and they were going to, because it was an initiative that they had brought up to it, but they were told that they could not promote it. And that same question went, as I said, with when it came up that they would put the advertising out too early, that question came up again that they were not allowed to do that. And the question was what is a town or a town's committees, I know one is a committee of council and one is not allowed to promote their own initiatives. And does that, they were curious, is that completely out of their range, or is there some way that we could facilitate their ability to promote their own initiatives and not have to be stepping on toes? So I see I have the recipient of probably the toe stepping here. So
just before I hand it over to Vicky, I was made aware of this, but not through those two groups. But another group had made me aware of this.
So that's three.
So we are. Go ahead, Vicky.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we'll deal with it kind of individually. So in terms of the New Year's Eve event, that event is on municipal property and required approval from council before it could go forward, because it's not only waiving of the rental fee, it's approval to have the event for liability purposes. It's also the waiving of the rental fee, but also council committing support and waiving the costs associated with the snow removal and things. So they were told at the onset that advertising could not take place until after this meeting and things, and council had given approval for the event. The advertising did go up, staff did contact them and said, you gotta wait until after Monday and to see council's decision and things. If the initiative was taking place on non-municipal property, it would be a different situation.
in response to that might be something we can look at going forward as being detrimental to the statements in our missions, in our rec development plan, saying to work with local groups in order to be able to be more productive and more homogenous with our communities. So good. But I'll let you get at the other ones.
Before we move there, through you, Your Worship, the group had been advised to get their request in ahead of time to allow for that advertising to go out sooner rather than later. And I think so that we could process the request through the township council and allow them the time. It was down to the very last minute before we got the request. unfortunately. So, if they had planned earlier and had submitted their request earlier, then the approval could have been given earlier and the advertising could have gone out earlier.
Just they're a volunteer group, and they're not working 7 days a week on just this promotion, so, but yeah.
Well, as I said, we're gonna have those conversations at a meeting. We just all need to pull in the same direction. We're all working together. We all have our jobs to do. I keep going back to when the policeman pulls me over and says, "You're going too fast." I don't argue with him because it gets real expensive then. So we need protocol to be followed, and we will follow up with that. Go ahead, Vicki.
Yeah, and through you, your worship, this is, we work with those groups all the time. The policies haven't changed and things like that. In terms of the promotion of the campground, and things, they were looking at promoting the campground for next year. Council has not made that decision yet, in proceeding with the pilot project, the campground for an additional year. So that is part of, there's two parts to this. So there's one, Councilor Sype had put for, when the motion went through originally for the 1 year, it was a 1 year pilot project, and things that 1 year is now completed, okay? And at that time, and then that was to allow for the master plan to come forward and to, have the findings in front of you to make that decision and things. So the master plan has indicated that there seems to be an interest or with the public at least in having this for another year. So their recommendation in there is to allow another year of the pilot project. The council has not made that decision, which will probably be something that we will bring forward. I haven't had a chance to talk to the CAO yet, but we would probably be bringing that forward for December the 20th meeting. And those are the types of things, when the questions were asked earlier this evening about the master plan, why we needed to have a second discussion on the 20th. It was to deal with some of these things that we've been putting off until the results of the master plan.
How does that fall into last year's advertising that they had prepared for their trial? The information I have from that organization is that they had promotional for last year's, and were told they could not do it.
Through your worship, we also have email records indicating that promotion did not come through until mid-September from the BIA, and that we were actually the ones who were chasing the BIA.
Oh, well,
We would be happy to send that forward to council.
okay, that's great, because I had, this morning's conversation was totally the opposite, so, thank you.
Through your worship, I did check that. It had come up, I believe, at the November 10th meeting.
I think this is a conversation we'll have at another time. I think this is a conversation we're going to have at another time rather than at the open council meeting right now. I think we're getting in.
Was it brought to council on that September meeting? I don't remember turning down their request. You said that didn't come in until September.
Through your worship, they were working with staff to get the promotional material out, and they were responsible for getting that promotional material to staff for approval, like staff to sign off that it goes out. That information, that promotional material was not provided to staff until September, mid-September, and again, we have that in the emails to prove that.
So Kevin, we'll do.
But nothing, well, what I'm just trying to get at the flow here. My first question was, when I asked her, is there some way that we could streamline this, that we don't get this bottleneck? I asked the question, are they not able to do their own promotions? Does it have to run through?
Maybe I'll clarify that.
It's a municipal facility.
Vicki, just a sec. We're going to have
Yeah,
Carson
so
speak to this.
BIAs, for example, I'm sure in their BIA budget have money allocated for promotions. As long as they are within their jurisdictions, i.e. council has provided the direction to do something, or they have the authorities from the municipality, they can put whatever ads they need out, provided it has the Blythe BIA logo as opposed to the Township of North Huron logo. I think anytime you put the Township of North Huron logo,
you're going to draw on approvals, the required approvals process from staff. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's generally the process when for advertising and promotions.
It just doesn't pertain to anything being successful the way it's being happening the way it is happening now, and it doesn't look like much. It looks like more push-pull than it is working together.
So I'm going to stop this conversation now, because we're going to have this conversation with all involved people. I'm a firm believer in everybody that's part should be at the meeting to defend and have the conversation. So I would prefer, Kevin, if we could just drop this now and give me a chance as your reeve okay? Am I okay with that?
Yep, I was just asked to bring to a question, that's all.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, Kevin. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vicky. Okay. Anybody else? Seeing nobody, we have a closed session and reporting out tonight. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby proceed at
9:29.
9:29 p.m. into an in-camera session closed to the public to discuss the following. Advice that is subject to a solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for the purchase, West Ontario Inc., and the proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of the land by the municipality or local board. Offer to purchase surplus airport agricultural lands in woodlot area. Do I have a mover? I have. Go ahead.
I just want to add, Reeve, I think we need to, and I've been thinking about this for a while, I think if there's going to be staff that are going to stay, that are not actually required to stay, that we're allowing them to stay for whatever reason, we need to incorporate that in the motion that allows them to stay.
Okay.
I mean, arguably, I don't believe we've been doing that, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying I think it'd be more clear for the public that, when we have the closed minutes, that we know that are here, because they've been given granted access to it, because technically, if they're not relating to it, they really shouldn't be here as relates to the closed session.
And just a quick one on that. We do that at county.
Yeah, and so if I may, Your Worship, so if that's what council's looking for, and by all means, that's a best practice that we can implement if you want, and what you would see then is basically added to that motion, and further that the following individuals be authorized to attend, for lack of a better way to put it, and it will list the staff representatives who are permitted to be in attendance, and again, that would only be those who are required to be there for the closed session business, and anyone beyond that generally should not be as part of that closed session meeting.
So would we need to pass a bylaw that at the next meeting or another meeting, or no?
Nope. So logistically, we can ensure that occurs for every closed motion to proceed into closed session going forward.
Did you want to tell us who's going to be here for this one, then, Carson? Or?
So if you want, it would just be the CAO and myself from staff, as well as the delegates from West Ontario, but that goes without saying. So I can add in further that CAO Evans and Clerk Lamb be the attendees for the closed session meeting.
Thank you very kindly. Did I get a mover for that? Did I need a mover for that?
You do.
Okay, I need a mover for that. I have Mr. Heffer, his hand up. Trevor, was that you with your hand up?
Second it.
All in favor? Carries. Thank you. You guys want to take a 5-minute break, or?